under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice. Next item up is, again, thank you, Ophir School. They've been providing us a Pledge of Allegiance leaders here for a number of meetings. We really appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, we do have item 2.5 to address.
The 2.5 item, yes, please.
Ready?
Go ahead.
So the public is aware, the council at the beginning of the meeting before closed session, pursuant to Government Code 54954.2, a matter came to the attention of city staff subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and they took action to add this item to the agenda. The vote was 5-0 in the affirmative by the current city council members present, and the action that was added is amend the agenda to add item number 2.5 as follows. Pursuant to the Brown Act, as amended by AB 2449, the council will consider approving the emergency circumstances for two council members to attend this meeting virtually. And for disclosure reasons, those two council members are ill, but they are well enough to attend virtually. And so if the council approves that item by a majority vote, then they will be allowed to attend and participate virtually. Along with that, individuals who are members of the public or anybody else participating remotely will have an opportunity to speak on agenda items or non-agenda items as they see fit. You do have to allow that opportunity. The other thing that would need to happen is, it's not such an issue here, but all votes have to be by roll call. Now, we have the voting system, so it would be the same for you, but the assistant city clerk would then call out to the two individuals participating remotely and ask their vote on each item. So if it's the pleasure of the council, we'll take a motion and a second and vote on whether or not this can happen.
On item 2.5.
On item 2.5.
I will make a motion.
Second. Motion second. Roll call, please.
And again, only those present vote on at this moment.
Motion carries with 5 yeses and 2 absent.
So now the two absent members may fully participate in the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is number 3, adoption of agenda. Entertain a motion from council to adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion that we adopt the agenda?
I would like to pull an item.
Sure.
I would like to, I'd like to pull item number 5.
Okay. Anyone else have an item to pull from the consent agenda?
This is just
Hold on.
this is just the adoption of the agenda.
Adoption of agenda.
I believe that do you want to pull item number 5 from the consent calendar or from the agenda altogether?
From the agenda, and forgive me if I'm in the improper order there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's clarify. Do you want item number 5 to not be discussed at all today?
No. I want to discuss it.
Okay, so then it would be appropriate to approve the agenda.
Okay.
Then when it comes time to do the consent calendar, you
calendar.
pull it from consent.
All right, thank you.
So I have a first.
Do I have a
Riggs.
second on the agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Goodson, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, now we have the consent calendar. Councilman Weber would like to pull item number 5. Do I have any other councilman?
Mr. Mayor, we're on
Yes.
presentations.
Oh, sorry. Oh, that's right. We have presentations. Didn't want to skip you.
I'm happy to be skipped if you would like that.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. So I was asked to provide a discussion about the regulation of sober living environments. What's the status of the law? What's going on? As everybody, I think anybody who's paying attention knows, the state of California has been regulating a lot. in the area of housing in the last several years. They in particular have been doing things like they're trying to increase the number of homes, including things like, including things like allowing the conversion of commercial office buildings into fully residential properties, regardless of zoning. They're doing a lot of things to try and increase the number of residences in the state. Now, reasonably, my thought is, well, you need to do a study to determine why do you not have enough housing, because in many ways, I think CEQA is really getting in the way of a lot of developers who are just saying, I'm not doing it. I'd rather go to another state. They can work remotely, and it's a lot easier to build. But anyway, that's a separate topic. The purpose of this discussion today is not to get into the weeds down at the 100-foot level on every single regulation related to all of the different kinds of housing, which ones need licensing, which ones don't, all of that. The purpose of this today is to give you a 30,000-foot overview. I apologize I'm an airplane guy, so I'm going to give you my airplane analogies. We can dip down, a little bit into some of these areas if needed, but by and large, I wanted to give you just some information on sober living environments. They are I'll use the term a popular topic recently, and not just in this community, in many communities. And so, what I want to do is just we'll go through now. I would ask your indulgence. Please interrupt me if you have a question. Now, after the presentation's done, if the members of the public have questions, we can deal with those, or during public comment, and I'll see if I can answer them. So here generally speaking, the different types of housing in California that exist under the code, under the different codes, the various codes. Health and safety code is one, the government code is another. And you've got drug and alcohol residential treatment facilities. And again, these are big, broad umbrellas, right? Drug and alcohol residential treatment facilities, community care residential facilities, and sober living environments and other independent living environments. What seems to happen is, and by the way, transitional housing is one that's also mentioned in some of the codes. Transitional housing is more akin to drug and alcohol residential treatment facilities. But what happens is, I will say this candidly, the code is not a model of clarity. And so many individuals will pull a code here and a code there, and they're in totally different sections, and they blend these concepts together. So you really have to be focused on the headings that you're looking at, because if not, you'll quickly run afoul of some of these different codes. But let's go through them real quick. Here is a chart, and it's impossible to read on this thing, but it was published in the agenda. What really makes a difference? What really makes a difference in these? And I apologize to you, but my goodness, I'm going to have to. The old man in me has to pull my glasses out. What really makes a difference in these types of homes is the class of individuals who live in the group homes. It's the second item down on the left-hand side. That's really what determines, do you need licensing or not? All right? And some of these, again, these are broad brush, but at the top you have those three same categories, right? Drug and alcohol residential treatment, community care and residential facilities. Both of those require licensing. Both of those have requirements that come along with them. We're not going to dig into those today. We're talking about sober living environments today. Okay? Well, now I'm going to go to the next slide. I just lied to you. Drug and alcohol, we'll talk about these very quickly. Drug and alcohol residential treatment facilities, the purpose of this is for drug and alcohol rehabilitation for adult alcoholics and drug addicts, and this is important here, who need treatment. They need medical treatment. They're experiencing withdrawals. They're experiencing all kinds of physical ailments. A license is required. It's regulated by the Department of Alcohol and Drug Programs, ADP. Those groups have to be licensed. They must have on-site management. And state law in this category presents local zoning for up to 6 or fewer residents, and you can impose a conditional use permit for 7 or more residents. Okay? Community care residential facilities. Similar, although it's in a different section of the Health and Safety Code, but similar items. The purpose of this is to provide non-medical care and supervision for the mentally ill, developmentally disabled, or other residents with disabilities who just can't live by themselves on their own, right? This is regulated by the Department of Social Services, also called community care. These homes must be licensed. These homes must provide on-site management. State law preempts, again, like the last one, state law preempts local zoning for up to 6 or fewer. 7 or more, you can have a conditional use permit. Now, sober living environments. The purpose of these is to provide housing and a supportive environment for adult individuals with disabilities, and these disabilities are typically drug and alcohol addictions, but for individuals who don't need immediate treatment. They're not experiencing withdrawals. They don't need, something to help them with their, what's it called when you're coming out of there you go. When they're coming out when they're being detoxed. These are not currently regulated by any state agency. However, some agencies that offer financial support can provide contractual rules for an operator to follow. So what that means is, again, they're not regulated. But if, for example, and I'll use the county because the county offers health services, if the county were to say, we're going to fund an SLE property, and they go to an SLE provider and say, we will fund your SLE home, but we're going to impose contractual conditions. You want the money, you have to comply with the contractual conditions. It's not a zoning requirement. It's not a governmental requirement. It's a contractual requirement. And that's where a lot of confusion comes in. There is no licensing required. There is no on-site management required. And it is sort of blurred here by that bar. But a local agency may only enforce zoning regulations that apply to all other residential dwelling units. And that includes the plumbing code, the zoning code, the fire code, things like that. Now, as soon as I say that, there's an issue with that. Today's plumbing code does not apply to a home built in 1950. The 1950s plumbing code will govern that. So it's not today's plumbing code. Generally speaking, there is no maximum number of residents that you can impose on an SLE without some significant liability. And we'll get to that in just a minute. I want to get to some facts about these sober living environments. They're not regulated by any state agency, as we've mentioned. Currently, no licenses are required or can be mandated for the operation of a sober living environment. Cities that have tried to regulate these environments have been routinely found to be discriminatory in recent cases, and we'll get into these cases for specifics, such as City of Encinitas and the City of Costa Mesa. So now, again, it's important to remember this overarching umbrella. Sober living environment residents are categorized as disabled under federal and state law. They're drug and alcohol addicts, right? They may not currently be experiencing withdrawals. They may not currently be experiencing a need for some detox. But as the saying goes, once an addict, always an addict, right? These are individuals. It was described to me by another attorney who I spoke with as you can consider it like a 24/7 AA meeting where these individuals are there to support each other, to help each other, to act like a family, but they're not regulated. Now, one other important thing to mention. Public agencies under the current case law, and under an opinion from Housing and Community Development, you cannot regulate the number in your public agency, and you cannot regulate where they are. You just kind of have to take them as they come. Now, let's get into some specifics. City of Encinitas, and I'm going to this one first. City of Costa Mesa actually started regulating earlier, but they had a case that was most recently published, so I'm going to get to them next. The City of Encinitas passed an ordinance in December of 2020. Separate definitions were provided for group homes and sober living homes, which was a subset of those group homes, and it differentiated those uses from residential care facilities. They imposed a 650-foot buffer between other group homes. You will see this is a common thread between this case and the Costa Mesa case. We'll get to that in just a minute. SLEs had specific regulations related to participation in a legitimate legitimate recovery program. The city tried to mandate, if you're going to be a resident in one of these locations, you must participate in AA or some other legitimate recovery program. And they required all group homes a permit to operate. All of them required a permit. So what happened here? In March of 2021, just 3 months after the ordinance passed, the Department of Housing and Community Development sent a letter stating that they found the ordinance to be discriminatory. And specifically, they said it was viewpoint discrimination. I'm jumping to the end here. It was protected, protected class discrimination, income discrimination, imposition of different requirements on similarly situated residential properties, and this is called viewpoint discrimination. And that the ordinance made housing more difficult for members of a protected class. Now, the two things they did, if you look at the two middle bullet points, they demanded that the city immediately repeal the ordinance, and they referred the matter to the Attorney General for enforcement. And in case anyone doubts it, there is a copy of the March 20th, 2021 letter. It actually, and I will say this for anyone who's trying to understand this, that letter is a really good outline of start to finish of all the codes related to drug and alcohol rehab and some of the others. They sort of talked about some of the others that need licensing, and then they dismiss those, and then they deal with sober living environments. That's a really good read. There's another one, again, I'll talk about in just a minute, called Group Home Technical Advisory from the Housing and Community Development from December of 2022. I have one copy here. I didn't include it in the presentation because this is a 30 some odd page document, so it didn't lend itself to put up there. But those are both really good overviews of the laws related to this issue. It's really in flux a lot right now. Let's go to Costa Mesa. In 2014 and 2015, Costa Mesa passed ordinances regulating sober living environments. Here's that magic number. Costa Mesa had 650-foot buffers between other group homes. You couldn't have more than one within 650 feet. Required a special use permit, mandatory good neighbor policies, and it required occupants to be enrolled in a legitimate recovery program. Sound familiar? I will say this, attorneys are really great at copying ordinances that have been defended in court successfully and saying, well, if that was successfully defended over there, we're safe in adopting it here. Encinitas saw that Costa Mesa had a bunch of wins from 2014 all the way up to 2023. They had a lot of wins defending their ordinance. And then the rug got pulled out a little bit. And again, like I said, that's likely why Encinitas copied their ordinance. 2 SLE operators sued the city of Costa Mesa, claiming violations of the Fair Housing Act, FHA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, and the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, or FEHA. And the case is SoCal Recovery LLC versus Costa Mesa. I won't read the citation for you there, but for those that are playing at home, they can look that up. And it's got a great overview of this whole issue. The city was granted summary judgment. Again, they had win after win after win. They won here in district court. And the courts do a similar thing. They'll look at previous precedent and say, well, you defended it here successfully. I don't want to overrule my colleague. Now, that's the job of the appellate court, right? The appellate court can overturn a lower court. City was granted summary judgment, meaning they won. In January of 2023, the Ninth Circuit, and this whole process, by the way, took several years. It takes a number of years to get in front of the Ninth Circuit and for them to write an opinion. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned the rulings, declared that the ordinance was discriminatory, found violations of FHA, ADA, and FEHA, and the Ninth Circuit directed the district court to make further findings on remand consistent with the Ninth Circuit opinion. That's sort of code for you're going to rewrite your opinion and make it comply with ours. It's an order from a higher court to a lower court saying, get rid of what you have, write something new that complies with this ruling. Okay, so let me just hit a few of the highlights here. Question and answer, sober living environments. Are SLEs part of any governmental program or oversight, state, city, or county? And I mean by that, are they in any statute? No, they're not. There's no statute regulating these. And I would question whether they actually could, because if they're not providing any licensed programs that require someone with a license in the home, I'm not sure that they would be able to do that. It's the licensing that requires the drug and alcohol rehab to require someone on site that has the training and the license from the state to give those services. Does the city have the ability to license or restrict someone from owning or operating an SLE? The answer is no. Can the city reject, prohibit, or manage SLE activity? And the answer is no. And then what happens if, I skipped ahead. And what happens if the city attempts to treat an SLE household different than every other household in the city? HCD will likely copy that letter that they sent to Encinitas, put your name at the top, and they will likely have the same referral to the Attorney General. You'll get the same thing. Litigation, you likely will be subject to litigation from the SLE operators. This, of course, results usually in large damage awards. The trend in litigation cases, personal injury cases have sort of tapped out. They're not increasing like they used to year over year over year, where you're, like the coffee cup McDonald's lady that burned herself and got, several $1 million. They've sort of reached a plateau. Constitutional discrimination cases have not stopped increasing in costs. The awards are staggering in many instances. And of course, there's some reputational harm to the city. Now, what can you do? The city can carry out your regular code enforcement activities, provided it's done in an equal and even-handed manner. And I will say, just as an example, strictly as an example, if you went to an SLE that had 7 people and you said, hey, you all can't have 7 people in here, then you better be prepared to go to every single family residential property where they have 7 kids or 5 kids and 2 parents and say, you can't live here. I highly doubt that any court would think that's an okay practice. I could never recommend that. You can enforce nuisance abatement regulations like those that are found in the Oroville Municipal Code. And I'm thinking of things like weed abatement, disabled vehicles on the lawn, noise regulations. You can't have a party at 2 o'clock in the morning with 400 decibel music coming out of the house, right? You can impose residential maintenance standards and common community regulations. As long as you don't engage in viewpoint regulation, you look at them all the same, right? Viewpoint regulation is you look at one and say, well, you're an SLE, so I'm going to regulate you. You're not, so I'm not going to regulate you. Your viewpoint cannot be discriminatory that way. It has to be even-keeled. Now, going forward, I have been in contact with some attorneys in Southern California. I have recently joined a task force that is looking to resolve some of the concerns that public agencies have related to SLEs. The individual who I spoke with, who I won't name, he asked me not to, but it started in city of Orange, and it expanded into a Southern California. And when I volunteered to be part of the task force, his comment was, well, I'm sure the mayor of Orange is going to throw you a parade downtown because this now becomes a statewide coalition. There are several legislators who are interested in what they can do. There will likely be some legislation that is coming regarding this issue in the coming months. I do want to, I'll use the word temper some expectations. The state cannot legislate on top of federal regulation. They are preempted. If the state has passed some, like for example, the State Fair Employment and Housing Act, the legislature can legislate on top of that because it's their own regulations. But the federal components, they can't legislate on top of. So there may be some difficulties. We're going to have to, figure out what can be done and thread the needle in some areas to find out what can be done and look at some of the cases, look at what other jurisdictions are doing, and see what might be able to withstand judicial scrutiny. Now, for the moment, our recommendation, and it's a very strong recommendation, is to pause any desire you have to regulate or restrict SLEs in the city. The risk of an adverse result is simply too great right now. It's just astronomical. Because of these other cases, and again, that Costa Mesa case is only 2 months old. Now, the City has not decided whether they're going to appeal to the Supreme Court. And I'm going to play politics for a minute. I will separate this from my legal opinion. If they wanted a court that was favorable to their position, this current U.S. Supreme Court is as good as they could ever get. Does that mean the U.S. Supreme Court will take it? Nope, doesn't mean that. I'm just saying if they decide to appeal, the Ninth Circuit, when cases are appealed, they get, about 2,900, almost 3,000 appeals every year to the Supreme Court. They take about 60 cases per year. So the numbers are low, right? However, the Ninth Circuit, for the cases that are taken by the Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit is overturned more than 75% of the time. And again, I'm just throwing out numbers there. I'm making no prognostications. I'm just saying that's the reality when you look at it. And to be candid, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Ninth Circuit does what it does in many instances, why they have these rulings, because they know the Supreme Court can't take them all and overturn them all. So they do what they think is the right thing. And whether it's right or not, again, everybody has their own opinion. But they know that the Supreme Court isn't going to take them all. So anyway, council members, questions? And again, this is a very high level. By the way, I will mention to you, I didn't want to get into it right now because that'd be really getting down to the 100-foot level into the weeds. We do have some modifications to the code, to our Oroville Municipal Code that we need to make. Not very many, but we have a few to do some cleanup work. Last time this was touched, I think was 2015, 16, somewhere in that range. And there's been a lot of litigation and legislation since then. So we do have some updating to do, and I'll tell you that candidly. That will be coming forward, and we will get down into the weeds when that comes to you for your consideration.
Councilman Johnstone, please.
I just want to say thank you. That was very informative. It really explained things down to the nitty-gritty pretty much of all the questions that have been being asked. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do that and explaining it the way you did. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Anyone else? Councilman Weber.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. Are boarding houses also qualified in that same sort of family that we're talking about?
Okay, so I need to ask, what do you mean by boarding house?
Well, like,
because
let's say, for instance,
you're talking about like a women's shelter, something along those lines, or are you talking about like someone renting out a room at their
renting a room, like we got a lot of houses in town that rent rooms to lineman college lineman college students. Okay, so there's no regulations that could be on them.
No. They do have regulations. We have a room rental ordinance. You can regulate those.
Okay.
Because those individuals are not operating as a family unit.
Right.
What tips this in the balance, and look, I will tell you, the declarations that these groups filed were deemed true. And I went and looked at them. And the group homes, in particular in Costa Mesa, they declared these individuals operate like a family. These individuals eat dinner together. These individuals, they even, one of them included, these individuals pray together. The closer you get to operating like a family, you're going to be considered a family. If someone rents a home, and I'll use myself as an example, if I wanted to rent a room from someone, I don't want to be part of their family. I want to come and go as I please, right? I just want the room. We can regulate that.
Okay. So does that require, what kind of license does it require to do that?
Wes knows the specifics on it. I think, is it a conditional use permit?
Yes, a boarding house by that name is regulated with a use permit, and it is only allowed in R3, R4, and RP zones.
R what, 3?
R3, R4, that's intense. That's for apartment complexes.
Like multifamily.
And multifamily.
Okay. And then RP?
And RP is an intense residential zone. Very few of them, but a couple in the downtown area.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, are you still up? Oh, no. Okay, all right. Any other councilman questions?
Now, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if the council members online have questions or
That's
not, but it might
my
be.
next question. Ms. Goodson or Vice Mayor Smith?
No, that was very thorough. Thank you.
And Councilman Goodson? Give you an opportunity to speak.
I have no comment, but thank you so much for the presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I know you know this, but it would be now appropriate to open up to public comment.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to do that. I'll just make a comment myself. I appreciate the presentation because it's something that we all need to learn about. Certainly, they have a purpose, and there's a point, but we also have a purpose to maintain our neighborhoods that some people, bought in. So I'm after whatever we can do to maintain and preserve both sides of the coin here. And our neighborhoods is some folks are very uncomfortable with the situation. Maybe we can find a way to make that comfortable. And I appreciate you joining the task force. I think it's good for us to be on the edge of knowledge for this thing. So thank you all. With that, and no other councilman questions, I'll open it up to the audience for questions. Anyone have a question?
Before, so I have a list of public speakers,
please do, yeah.
but if there's anyone on Zoom that wants to speak on this item, please use the raise your hand feature, and I will call on you as well.
Thank you.
All right. So what cards do we have?
So, Mr. Mayor, we have 9 speakers, it looks like. And so our first speaker is Eric Schenk.
Eric.
That's me. The question I'd have is if there was an HOA or a local covenant among property owners, could that restrict the SLEs?
So the short answer is yes. What we would do is we would reach out to the HOA association. We would not separately enforce that because they're not our rules and regulations.
Right.
We would reach out to the HOA and say, here you go. This is what we learned. Take care of it.
So it is possible that neighborhood by neighborhood, property owners could form covenants or restrictions about the property if they all willingly joined in and potentially restrict the SLEs.
I don't want to give some false hope here.
Yeah.
It is incredibly difficult because the number of residents you have to get to form that when people bought in knowing that they don't have those restrictions,
right?
It's almost impossible.
Yeah, it would be tough.
To answer your question, in theory, could that be done?
Yes.
In theory, yes. I will tell you, I have to date never seen it. Now,
but that may be our only hope moving forward.
Well, that's why I joined the task force is so I can represent the various opinions here, and say what can be done, and is there anything that can be done, and how effective would it be, and so. It's important to remain on the pulse of this, but that, to answer your question directly, in theory, maybe, a qualified maybe.
And thanks for the presentation. You laid it out really well. I wanted to address the council and the mayor. I live by Hewitt Park. I live and work by Hewitt Park. And a few months ago, I had some concerns about Hewitt Park, and I reached out to the city council members and the mayor. And I wanted to thank Tracy Johnstone, Chrissy Riggs, Janet Goodson. I hope you feel better fast. They responded to me really fast. And then Mayor Pittman and Sean Weber, you guys were willing to meet with me and spend time listening to my concerns. And I just really appreciated how responsive the city council was. And in fact, one of my concerns was all the lights in Hewitt Park had been vandalized and didn't work. And within weeks of the meeting, they were back on. So I really appreciate you guys taking care of that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let me add to your answer, too, is some of the subdivisions that you probably now are long gone or thought about, you may have to look in your deed restrictions to see, because many of the subdivisions we have in the community have HOAs. I know the ones on Acacia have them, and Orange Heights has some, so it may be good to do some research on,
worth looking into.
Wherever you live.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next person.
Our next speaker is Susanna Wedgwood.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to make a statement. I'm a downtown Oroville resident, and I've been working with a group of neighbors and with the Advocates for Responsible Treatment, a grassroots all-volunteer advocacy group representing Californians on issues of recovery, housing, and residential neighborhoods. We are not lawyers, but we are concerned citizens. I think I should start by saying that we do not believe it is necessary, and we do not seek a Costa Mesa-style sober living ordinance. We believe that the existing zoning codes are adequate to enforce occupancy limits for sober living houses. I'm here with a few other members tonight. We are here to comment on current sober living law and to state our opposition to the proposed changes that were recently redlined into Oroville's 2022 draft housing element during the public comment period and submitted to the Planning Commission. The proposed changes would redefine family and would essentially allow short-term, high-capacity houses serving 7 or more persons to operate in all Oroville residential zoning districts by right without a conditional use permit. It would remove existing upper occupancy limits in these residential zones. And we oppose that. In 2003, the California Attorney General rendered an opinion on behalf of the city of Lompoc that cities can prohibit, limit, or regulate boarding houses in certain zones to preserve the residential character of the neighborhood. The proposed changes would sacrifice our permanent residential housing stock and community to businesses who are seeking to profit from the vulnerable. If the proposed high-capacity housing were to lodge the disabled, this would violate their right to live in the least institutional setting available to them. If these businesses were also to provide supervised non-medical lodging to recovering addicts, these would not be cooperative, independent, sober living environments, or SLEs, as the city attorney described them. I think that we need to clarify here that SLE is not a legally defined term. The relevant up-to-date legal definition is recovery residence. This was defined.
Suzanne, we hit the 3-minute mark.
Time.
Sorry. Can we, if it's very short, but we have 3 minutes for everyone, so.
Okay. For the purposes of legal and regulatory discussion, let's please stop calling business-operated and controlled recovery residences sober living homes. To our knowledge, no cooperative sober living home exists in Oroville, and for this discussion, we are specifically talking about recovery residences, which are clearly commercial in nature. We strongly oppose the additional changes that have been piggybacked onto our draft housing element.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
If you'd like to provide the written, we'd be happy to enter that in the record. Give it to the clerk. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Natalie Sheard.
For all the speakers, we have a little light up here for the last 30 seconds of the or it's up there.
And a big one there too.
All right.
Thank you. I'm a member of the Planning Commission, which is also the Historic Advisory Committee, and a resident of downtown. Our neighborhood group supports housing element updates that bring affordable housing and permanent residents to our city. We also support addicts and recovering addicts who already live in our residential neighborhoods in traditional permanent housing models. We believe it is important to support our neighbors during their times of trouble. But at the same time, Oroville should not develop a transient lodging capacity and transitional housing industry to solve housing challenges. The additional proposed changes to the housing element, which would redefine family to remove occupancy limits for transitional housing, supportive housing, and residential care facilities serving 7 or more persons in all Oroville residential zones are inappropriate for the following reasons. It would be imprudent to push through significant changes to the housing element with insufficient notice to the public. Because Oroville is so economically depressed, the stability and welfare of the permanent community must be the highest priority of the city, and it must defend the community from economic exploitation. Boarding houses do not belong in residential neighborhoods, which is why zoning establishes a conditional use permit process. In our review of current California case law and legislation, we found no new ruling that would require such a change to the local occupancy code. We have submitted our legal reference list to be included in the minutes. Recent state legislative changes have addressed the number of structures on a parcel. However, they have not had an impact on the occupancy of a single structure. It would also be unwise to make zoning changes when case law is in flux. This could subject the city to unnecessary risk and potential legal expense. For example, the pending submission to the U.S. Supreme Court on the Costa Mesa sober living ruling. The proposed changes also would have an impact on our residents and the character of our neighborhoods. Finally, it is unadvisable to push through zoning changes that differ so radically with other California state and city ordinances established around 6 unrelated adult occupants. The single lease or the single rental agreement is the standardized definition across the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, next speaker is Julie Miller.
And while Julie's coming up, Mr. Mayor, if I might, I do want to clarify something. I have no idea if Costa Mesa is going to appeal. So I just want to make that clear. I went down that road for a little bit, but
Gotcha.
I have no idea if they are.
Appreciate it.
They could.
They could.
They could. The other thing I would mention about HOAs and their regulations, they're also required to comply with federal constitutional principles related to discrimination in housing. Many HOAs back in the 50s included some terms that today would be abhorrent. And so those have been, even though they're technically still on the books in some instances, not here, they're simply invalid. And so I wanted, again, there are some hurdles with that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but there are some really big hurdles, which is really what the task force needs to work on.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Miller?
My name is Julie Miller, and I'm a resident of the Downtown Historic District. With all due respect to Attorney Scott Huber, the Sober Living slide deck presented tonight unfortunately contains several inaccuracies and errors as follows. Slides 2 and 3 indicate that all unlicensed SLEs are cooperative and independent. However, SLEs fall into 2 categories, commercially operated and independent. Slide 4 indicates licensed recovery housing is managed by the Department of Alcohol and Drug Programs. This department was eliminated in 2013, 10 years ago. In 2018, the state defined commercially operated SLEs with treatment affiliations as recovery residences under California Health and Safety Code 11833.05. Recovery residences are required to be registered with the state, so there is state regulation of recovery residences. The city has an obligation to address all businesses operating in residential zones, especially if they pretend to be residential uses of property. The DOJ and HUD and a federal judge have found regulations similar to Costa Mesa's to not be discriminatory in the state of Arizona. The city attorney has not identified and compared these federal findings. After many favorable determinations on behalf of Costa Mesa in lower courts, one ruling has reversed those decisions. The Costa Mesa case is being appealed to the Supreme Court. To ensure the city of Oroville has the best advice, the attorney must have more time to fully understand current laws. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, our next speaker is Shara Sheard.
Listening to the presentation, and I just got more depressed and more depressed and more depressed. It seems that there was nothing that us downtown homeowners could do. and that these SLEs just have us over the proverbial barrel. And I'm sitting here wondering, why did I move to Oroville? And I just have to think that the residents have to have, we're spending local dollars. We're shopping here. We're dining here. Our kids are going to school here. We're the ones investing in this community. I have to hope that the city council and the city would help us maintain that relationship, because I want to stay here and I want to be a good neighbor, and I don't know how that's going to happen when all I see are ambulances and fire trucks and police officers responding to the same houses over and over and over again. It doesn't give me a sense of pride. It doesn't give me a sense of safety. And it has me looking at my homeowner values and wondering on God's green earth if I can ever sell my house, if I'm going to have to disclose that there's an SLE next door. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, oh my God, am I going to be sunk in this money pit of a house? Mm-hmm. So please, God, help us, be good neighbors. And like I said, I want to do the right thing, and I want to stay here. But if City Oroville is going to go down this path, I can't see what else is going to be left here. If it's going to be nothing but the haves and the have-nots, and there's nothing left in the middle, we can't stay here. So please, let's find a way to make this work for everybody. So thank you.
Sarah, was that your first name?
Shara.
Oh, Shara. Thank you.
Shara.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is TJ Jensen.
Hello, good evening, City Council, Mayor Pittman. I'm anti-regulation, so I don't like regulators at all. I feel very, very sorry for you guys to have this discussion. And I don't want to say this, but it's funny, we can regulate how many pets we have on a piece of property. We can regulate what color paint you can paint your house. The problem is we're humans and we have to coexist. And I didn't know I was going to attend this evening, so I didn't come prepared, but I'm sure there's plenty of thoughts in my head. I went to Starbucks this morning at 5 o'clock, grabbed my coffee to someone overdosing in the dining room, to a police officer responding to someone at Panda Express. So there's an element of society trying to solve this problem of addiction. So I kind of want to go back to Prohibition times when everything was illegal. But we've got a portion of society trying to solve the problem. But the problem is greed. When you're solving a problem with capitalist adventures, there's greed involved. Mm-hmm. So when you have SLEs becoming corporations and greed gets involved, I don't know if that's the circumstance. But in my thought process is the only potential that we could do to overlay Oroville is rental caps, to ensure not only that are we doing rental caps on across the board, but ensuring that the SLE owners aren't taking advantage of those people that are residents, because they are the weakest of our society. They depend on us. Every one of us has lost someone to addiction. It's in all of our families. It's everywhere around us. So let's do our part, try to protect them with the regulations we can, and not look at them as not our neighbors. They are our neighbors. Our neighbors are overdosing at a place I spend $12 for a damn coffee. Mm-hmm. It's kind of society that I didn't realize we were in. So back to 1985, when I was in kindergarten, I used to rebuild trucks with my dad in our driveway, right on Southview Drive. And I can remember next door the house blowing up when I was in the garage. And I always wondered why my dad had his gun on the shelf. It was meth all around me. That's no longer around my family's residence that still lives there. So we did something right, but we can't just disregard the fact addiction does exist. I don't know how you guys are going to solve it, and thank you for joining that committee. And I'm all ears, so good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Good.
Mr. Mayor, our next speaker is Joseph Sanders.
I'm a neighbor of one of the SLEs, and my concern is the density, well, all the things that have been brought up so far too, but is the density and the placement of the SLEs, because we have a lot of them in a very concentrated area of our neighborhood. And that brings a lot of their friends and their acquaintances and their drug dealers and everybody into our neighborhood. And the other thing that concerns me is the placement, because the one that happens to be by my house is right across the street from a school. Based on the number of probation officers and things that show up there every day, they've got to be criminals, okay? And so there must be some regulation that can take place based on who can be in that house to the proximity of this school. So those are a couple of things. I think the way to maybe get a chance to regulate them is, if these people are disabled, as they say, and everything, and they're, technically disabled, when the funding runs out and they kick these people out of the house, let's make them keep them so that we hurt them in the pocketbook. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, our next speaker is Annie Terry.
Getting up out of those chairs is hard the older you get. I'm going to be really brief, I hope. I only have 3 minutes. I have to be brief. Anyway, 20-ish years ago, I lived out in Thermalito, and I had a neighbor that complained about our dog barking too much. So animal control came out to make sure the dog was taken care of, had water, had food, blah, blah, blah. And it turned into the neighbor complaining about dog mess in my yard. And so my neighbor had absolutely every right in the world to complain and to file a complaint and to have someone come out and check it out. And so they did. And it was the neighbor on the side of my house that there's a plum tree in the neighbor's yard that hangs over into my yard. And all of the dog mess that they were complaining about along the fence was rotting plums. It wasn't dog mess. And but I couldn't be mad at my neighbor because they had every right to complain. If they want to file a complaint, they can complain about anything they want to complain about. And so we responded to it by letting the guy from animal control or whatever that is with the county come out in our yard and check that this is actually rotting plums. And yes, I should probably clean up the rotting plums, but they're not my plums. They're my neighbor's plums that's complaining. And I said all that to say this. We operate a couple of, the rescue mission, not me personally, operates a couple of SLEs, not in the downtown Oroville area. So I'm not saying this because I'm trying to defend somebody. I'm not. If you have a complaint with your neighbor, the best thing you can do is to bring that problem up to your neighbor. If you have an SLE in your neighborhood, bring your problems to the person that is administrating, I guess is that word, administrating that facility. And they shouldn't have a problem with that in the same way that I didn't have a problem with my neighbor complaining about the dog mess in my yard, even though it was his own plums. Because we all have a right to have our own level of peace and comfort in our own homes. The people in those SLEs and the people in those private residences as well. Because basically when it comes right down to it, they're all private residences. And also, I just want to say I'm speaking on behalf of myself. as a private citizen. And I always like to say that when I'm just giving my own personal opinion. Thank you for listening to me.
Hi. Our next speaker is Bill Spear.
Spear.
This is a emotional issue for me. I've been watching the attacks on the SLE downtown, and you know it's they're on the front lines trying to help. The least of these, their integrity's been insulted, their business has been attacked, and if it wasn't for them, there would be a whole bunch more homeless, a whole bunch more crimes, a whole bunch more. We are blessed in our city to have so many different recovery homes, and people can say whatever they want to say, but it is the solution to the problems. We complain about the homeless. They're here and they're there, and we've learned what the laws are about the homeless. You can't just, they're people. They're somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's parents. You can't just run them out. There are issues for us to deal with, and we are learning what the laws are, what we can and what we can't do. We're empowering the rescue mission, which is a blessing. The rescue mission has served our city for so many years, doing the least of these. If it wasn't for the rescue mission, the people would really be complaining. Go to Chico and take a look at what's going on there. Look at their bike path. Go over to Marysville. Is that what you guys want? So we're just going to complain about some of the houses are too packed. At least the probation officers can come and find everybody there and do all the checks there. And I am so grateful and thankful, and we should be saying, how can we help them? I would like our city council to say, hey, how can we fix the problem? How can we help, instead of being attacking and trying to regulate them? We're already regulated enough. Oh, at least a lot of them are. We're not regulated because we don't have SLEs. We have discipleship housing, and we are a family unit. And you can't say what a family unit is. You can't say, oh, this ain't a family unit, but ours is a family unit. In California, our state law doesn't say what a family unit is. A family unit is the people that you identify. In the good book, the word says, who is my mother and who are my brothers? And he pointed around and he says, those that hear the word of God and obey it, that is my mother and that is my brother. So we shouldn't be here being a crino. That's a word I made up myself. It is a constitutional republic in name only. We should empower the people who are... We should empower the people that are on the front lines. How can we help them? We could come together, the code enforcement, the city, the police, and everybody work together because we are on the same team.
Time.
In the same city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, our last speaker is Celia Hirschman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Celia. Go ahead.
Terrific. I'm Celia Hirschman, longtime, 13-year resident of downtown Oroville. I just wanted to make a couple of comments relating to what was spoken so far. Scott, there are a couple things that I felt were inaccurate about what you said. The state law indicates that when dealing with occupancy, they're really reflecting adults, and they are reflecting adults in this case, not children. Also, on the books right now in Oroville, our occupancy for a single-family home without a permit is 6 adults. If you need more than 6 adults, you need a conditional use permit. The reason this has all come up is because 2 weeks ago, West Irving came to the Planning Commission and said that the city was going to be making changes to the occupancy unit as it relates to the housing element, eliminating the need for a conditional use permit for 7 or more. And that is fundamentally why I'm speaking today. That cannot happen. That will change literally the face of Oroville and would be a huge long-term problem. Don't just think about the 3 SLEs that are a block from my home in particular. Certainly, I believe they're less than 650 feet apart. Think about every other area where now you can have 7 to God knows what number of people living in a large house and the impact that's going to have on the community of Oroville. This is not why we invested in Oroville. This is not why people moved to Oroville to live. There needs to be some realism here, and the most important thing are the inhabitants. I agree with Billy Spears when he says we need to work to protect our vulnerable, and several other people said that, and I completely agree. And the answer is to use more housing, not to cram areas full with housing, with individuals, not to put the burden on everyone else, to manage it properly. And that's what our city council should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Celia.
Mr. Mayor, that's the end of the public speakers for this item.
All right, do we have any other questions from the council? Or any questions that were not listed on the blue sheet that the city clerk that gathered? Oh, Councilman Thompson.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, if our attorney could clarify, there's been some discussion back and forth regarding these homes. If you could clarify the distinction between a SLE and a boarding house, because I think there's there are some that are calling these homes boarding houses, and others that are referring to them as SLEs. So what is the specific defining difference between a boarding house and an SLE?
So many of the people that commented stated this is found nowhere in the law, and that's true. It's not. And so what happened was they were analogizing. This is what the SoCal Recovery versus City of Costa Mesa case is all about. They presented themselves to the court as a family unit. And that's why when I was talking with this attorney who's also on the task force, he said, think of this like a 24/7 AA meeting. They voluntarily live together, right? They agree to have their according to some of the declarations that I read, they have dinner together, they have breakfast together, they have lunch together. They talk about, they support each other. When someone says, hey, I'm really having a hard day, they communicate with each other. And so
My only question in regards to that, and I've got a lot of friends here that run and have SLEs and whatnot. But I want specifically, because there is some part of some SLEs where the condition of them, from my understanding, the condition of them being in that home is financially related. There is a cost to the person to be in that home, as opposed to her family. I'm not my kids are getting the age where I can charge them rent.
Good luck.
But is that where is that a defining moment or a distinction that would
I will say this, none of the cases that I have read on this deal with the financial component.
Okay.
One of the things that was not in the slides, and by the way, the one of the speakers was correct. All of those, the Department of Alcohol and Drug Programs was merged into Health and Human Services Agency. Still exists, just has a different name on it. But anyway, these cases, the city of Costa Mesa had a limit of 6 individuals. And one of them that wanted more said, this is unfair. You're not going to families with 5 children and 2 parents and saying, you all have to have another home. Someone's got to move out. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the viewpoint discrimination came in one of the areas, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned a boarding home. A boarding home, to my knowledge, without any of these other medical needs, is a home where people renting out rooms. That can require a conditional use permit. That can be limited to zoning, right? If you're going to rent out rooms, if I have 5 empty rooms and I want to rent it to 5 people, I've got to come to the city for that. right? But that's distinctly different than a sober living environment. I will tell you, counsel, I frequently say, look, I don't always have the greatest of news or the worst of news, but I always give it to you straight. This really is in flux right now. There's a lot that has been overturned with this Costa Mesa decision. A lot. Costa Mesa had win after win after win. So that's why other agencies were saying, well, let's adopt what they did, because it appears to be the courts are ruling that that's okay. Now that's all in flux. Costa Mesa's ordinance is in flux. Encinitas is in flux. There is a great sifting going on right now. And where this ends up, I don't know that anybody can predict. I really don't.
Anyone else, council, with questions? Councilman Johnstone.
This is not so much questions, but for everybody that spoke tonight, thank you. I really appreciate hearing your thoughts and your concerns. However, I only heard your concerns. I didn't hear anybody's ideas on being a good neighbor. How can we work together with these people who are our neighbors? They need help. They're getting the help. How can you, as concerned citizens and good neighbors, what are your ideas? What are your ideas to help not only be a good neighbor, but help the city make decisions on how we can all be good neighbors to each other? So that's what I would like to hear from you. I've heard your concerns, and they may be valid. I don't know everything that's going on, but I would like to hear your ideas on how we can be these good neighbors and help support these SLEs, which are very, very greatly needed in Oroville. So I challenge you to bring some ideas, and let's work together to see what we can come up with for the city as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, in the queue we have Councilman Weber.
Yes, thank you. So I have a couple questions for you, Scott. Can we, as a council, do we have the authority to define what a family is?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Is a Lineman College student housing considered a boarding house?
Wow, that's a great question. I can tell you the Lineman College does have permits to operate. Perhaps Wes can.
Yes, we do know that many students at the Lineman College do rent rooms in the Oroville Inn, which is obviously a hotel-type rental operation, and a number of them do rent rooms in private homes and other situations. Those would presumably all be considered room rentals and not a family or a group home.
So it would be considered a boarding house?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is what was back to you, Scott? Thank you for that. Is what was said right now by Celia Hirschman, is that accurate about if a family of 7 needing a special use permit in their house?
Yeah, I don't. I will tell you, I have not seen a case that has 7 adults who are blood related. I've never seen a case where someone tried to enforce regulations against them. So I can't argue about or even divine whether or not that would be allowed. But what I can tell you is I suspect that if you were to try and say nobody may have more than 6 residents in every single family residential property, you would run afoul of a number of housing issues. Ones that I can think of, for example, the historical building code. We have buildings here that are old and historic. The Oroville Inn is actually one of them. That individuals can, if they want to own that building, they can put it back to its original
purpose,
original setup, original layout, even though today that layout would never pass code, right? Rooms could be way too small, fewer bathrooms than are required under the plumbing code. So you would run afoul of a lot of codes, and I can't imagine that given that the court in Costa Mesa and Housing and Community Development in the Encinitas case. They both had a limit of 6 individuals. HCD said, and they are not related. HCD said that's discriminatory. City of Costa Mesa, the court said that's discriminatory. So I don't think we need to go to, well, what if it was 7 adult individuals who are all related? I think you're going to have the same result. Now, again, we'll see what happens down the road. I hate to say, look, let's just sit and wait and see how this plays out. But I think you run a really big risk of liability if you don't wait and see how this plays out. That's my concern.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. Because I was just slightly concerned, because if that were to be the case, if 7 people in one house was to be too many, then Maria and I would be automatically disqualified because we have 5 children. So then that means I would probably be receiving a knock at my door from code enforcement then, perhaps, if that was the case.
Special use permit.
Yeah, we need to apply for a special use permit, Maria. So, all right, thank you very much.
Vice Mayor Smith is on the queue.
Yeah, actually, Councilman Weber addressed really my question, which was, it would almost seem, or one could construe it's racially motivated, just because within other cultures, it's, quite frequent that you see, family sharing, large families sharing smaller spaces. And so I would be very concerned going down that path of requiring a conditional use permit. I'm, of course, remote here, and I was trying to capture some of the comments alluding to the planning department maybe touching that. So I just wanted to get clarity that, is there anything or consideration regarding that? Because that would seem to me like a very dangerous place to go under that pretense anyway.
Yeah, I think at the moment it would be a dangerous place to go. And that's why I say we have several ordinances that need to be amended because they don't comply. We say in the housing element that we submitted, I think we put a deadline of August to make these changes by August. HCD, the only hammer they have is funding. And by recommending that the Attorney General go after the city of Encinitas, one of the challenges is if you don't comply with something that the state wants you to comply with, they can cut your funding. Now, I think that's draconian, but apparently they don't, because that's directly what was threatened. And I, of all the things, I hate to say it's about dollars, but you don't want to risk your funding on this. You don't want to risk liability. I will tell you, I could not stand in court with these cases that are out there and make a valid legal argument that would protect the city. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I guess to my point, it's unintended consequences. In other words, you're trying to regulate an SLE by putting a cap on how many residents in a single family home, but then we have a large minority population where that's just part of their cultural identity. They just see life differently than others, and again, I could just see that being problematic. So it's just not a simple solution, obviously.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Johnstone?
Thank you.
Well, my question was answered, but just going back to what Councilman Weber said, I mean, I have 7 children, and my youngest just turned 18. So at one point in time, I had 8 adults living in my house at various times. And so I would need a special housing permit because I have 7 children. I mean, would that... Okay, because we don't eat. We rarely ate dinner together.
That's where I say that's where I say that that's where I say it gets into. I can't imagine that the courts would ever say that that's a valid ordinance if that were to be put in place. It just wouldn't be.
Okay.
The problem isn't that scenario. The problem is that the court has suggested that SLEs with a limitation of 6 or more who are unrelated is unconstitutional. It violates FHA, it violates FEHA, and it violates the ADA. That's it. And I mean, we can argue all day long. We can have this discussion, and I sometimes call these, hot chocolate talks or coffee talks, right? Where you can sit down and have this conversation and argue about what really should be. But we don't have the votes. The court has the votes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question. The attorney, in the other cases, the Encinitas and Costa Mesa, were the issue of accessory dwelling units addressed?
Yeah, actually it was. One of the regulations that they had in at least Costa Mesa, but it might have been Encinitas because, again, I highly suspect Encinitas just copied Costa Mesa's ordinance because it had been defended so many times. Excuse me. The ruling was that Encinitas said, or I'm sorry, Costa Mesa said that if you had an ADU, that you had to have both of the main residence and the ADU had to be a sober living environment with a cap of 6. You couldn't have one and then the other. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of analysis on that at all. In fact, there was none.
Gotcha.
They just overturned their ordinance and said, make findings consistent with this ruling. But so whether, excuse me, I was on a flight last week and that dry air really just got to me. So whether that would be viable or not, I don't know. But that's something that's going to have to be played out here, I think, in these cases. And again, I don't want to, beat this drum too heavily, but this is why it's good to be on the task force.
Exactly.
I wouldn't put much stock in that claim of we're going to get a parade for making it a statewide coalition now. But we now have about 4 or 5 attorneys, 2 or 3 legislators, a mayor or 2 or 3 mayors. We've got a good group now that can really start to dig into this and figure out where do we go and what can we ask for and what will withstand judicial scrutiny. I don't know.
Well, it's certainly a complex topic because we have, as you mentioned, the students. We also have the traveling medical staff that do rent a number of rooms in this community. And we've got just tourists coming in too. I mean, it broaches a lot of different topics. The question I have for code enforcement, you mentioned the residential maintenance standards. Would you have any recommendations coming from that or from your experience running the code enforcement as to any of those things or maybe something future for discussion?
We simply look at everything the same way. So we treat every residence. My workers are trained to. We don't discriminate. We don't go. We get a lot of complaints about the same residents in the city, but and a lot of those complaints are not valid. We just go out, do our inspections. I'm just a big believer in waiting on what the courts decide. So
I appreciate
there's
that.
nothing. We don't try to get creative because when you get creative, you get in trouble. Get creative.
I was just curious with your experience and practice. Are there any suggestions you may have for amendments? I know that the attorney mentioned those 3 items: the certain regulations and the common community regulations. Anything forthcoming for that?
Yeah, let me jump in. If there was something that we could enforce uniformly, we would bring it to the council.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. You already have an ordinance against parking, a certain number of vehicles on a lawn, and they have to be functioning and registered and all that.
Gotcha.
If you didn't have that, we would then come back to you and say, hey, if that was a problem with these SLEs, we could come back and say, hey, we've got an ordinance that you might want to consider related to parking vehicles on a property. You already have that right now, but again, if there's anything that we can uniformly apply, we'll raise the issue.
All right. Well, thank you. Any other questions from council? I certainly thank everyone in the audience for being here because, we put all the good minds together. We'll come up with something, whatever it may be, to satisfy the entire community. And I thank you all for participating today. It's a very good thing that you do. That's what it's all about, having a city. Next item. Now that I've got my calendar right, the consent agenda. Any councilman have any issues on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I believe public comment, right?
Oh, public communication. God dang, I got it. Excuse me, public communication. This is a time for hearing of any non-agenda items. If you'd like to bring up and have your 3 minutes on a topic, please do so.
Mr. Mayor, we have one speaker, Bill Spear.
Oh, Mr. Spear, please.
City Council, I'd like to pray for you all this evening. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for such a beautiful day. Thank you for the changing in the season. Thank you for all our city council and our mayor and our vice mayor. Thank you for your grace and mercy in all our lives. And Father, I pray for wisdom. It says, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously, and it will be given. So we ask for a generous outpouring of your wisdom, that we will be able to navigate through all the issues and the problems, and do it in a way that is honoring, a way that is uplifting. And there are so many that are in need. And so we pray for miracles in our city. We pray for all our youth, that you would bless them in the high schools and the elementary schools. So many issues and problems coming against our youth, and give us the solutions. Use us to be good role models. Use us to raise them up in the way they should go. Thank you for the Hope Center and the Rescue Mission, the Haven of Hope on Wheels, all of the different agencies who are on the front lines. I thank you for all of the SLEs, all of the programs, all of the treatment centers, all of the discipleship homes, all of us. It's a great army that you're raising up of people making a difference, that we will make Oroville a city on a hill, a light on a shelf, that other cities will come to see what Oroville is doing and how Oroville is so blessed. And Lord, I declare it, God, in the heavens, and I declare it on earth. Your kingdom come, your will and your plans and your purposes. And Father, as we continue to call on your name, as we continue to humble ourselves and repent, your word says that you will hear from heaven, and that you will heal our land, and our land needs healing. And we thank you for the legislation in California, and a lot of times I don't agree with them, but I thank you as they look after the family, they look after the homeless, they're looking after the rights of the individual, and for our country, the constitutional republic. We pray your freedom reign in Jesus' name.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that is the only speaker on non-agenda items.
Do we have anyone zooming in on non-agenda items?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any public speakers on Zoom anymore.
Okay. Thank you. Well, now we're going to finally get to the...
Sorry, really quick. So
Oh.
I'd like to come Shannon.
Sure.
Thank you so much. I am the director of Havens Court Family Resource Center.
And I'm Shannon Tomlin, the Center Director for Havens Court Higher Learning Child Care Center.
And we are super excited to be here with you guys. We want to let you guys know, and the rest of the community, that we have 2 brand new resources that are coming to South County. We have a Family Resource Center, as well as a 24-hour Higher Learning Child Care Center. We're super excited. These are things that we have not ever seen done before here in Northern California. And for me personally, as someone who grew up here, was raised here, born here, there's been so many things that I've seen and so many changes that have taken place here in our city, right? But also things that have not changed in a really, really long time. And so as a community-driven organization with the Oroville Southside Community Improvement Association, our vision for our community is to bring everyone together on a level to where we can start to heal, right, as a community, as one. Having a resiliency hub located right here in South County I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I haven't seen anything to this capacity before, and we don't take that lightly. And so with the support that we have gotten from the community, the feedback that we have gotten from the community, it's been really, really great. And just to know that we're in the position to be able to do that, we're super excited. As far as the Family Resource Center, we are going to have licensed clinicians. We're going to have mental health specialists on site. We're going to have counseling services. We want this to be a one-stop shop for everyone in the community. We're going to be addressing housing, right? We're going to be able to get folks into housing. We're going to be able to support them with those efforts, and really just opening up our center to partnerships, right? It doesn't make sense for us to recreate the wheel. And so just knowing that we are an organization who is open to collaborating, we're open to partnering, we really just want to get the word out there that we are definitely the ones, we're the catalysts, we're going to be the ones to do it, but you guys are going to be the ones to help us take it even further by jumping on the bandwagon, opening yourself and your agencies up to the possibilities of what we can create together. And so I would like to formally invite all of you guys to our grand opening / ribbon cutting on Saturday, April 8th. I believe you guys all received emails. Perfect. So we're really going to have a good time. We're going to have free food. We're going to have jump houses, bounce houses, all of that. And it's really just an opportunity. Hey, come see what you guys have to look forward to in your community. And it's only going to get better from here. And so thank you so much for letting me share. I'll let Shannon go into the 24-hour childcare.
Well, I think we're almost out of time, but it is 24-hour childcare. We're serving children 0 through school age.
Time.
Thank you, ladies. Saturday, 11 o'clock. Yes. Got it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, now that is the last of the public speakers.
Okay. All right, folks. Well, we'll move on to consent calendar. And we have one item, one to pull, number 5, was that correct? Please. Any other items to pull? I entertain a motion to move the consent calendar with item 5 pulled.
I so move.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Goodson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Thank you. Councilman Weber, item number 5, agreement as needed for professional architectural engineering services with Russell Galloway Associates.
Yes, thank you. So item number 5, I think, feels a little bit like cart before the horse, because we also have item number 13, which will be the formation of an architectural design work ad hoc committee. And if adopted, if item 13 were adopted, we will form the ad hoc committee. And I just feel like item 5 is ahead of that process. So I would like to push off 5 until our next meeting and see if it's the council's will that we adopt item 13 and form the ad hoc committee. And if so, then once the ad hoc committee is formed, then we could work with item number 5 through the ad hoc committee.
If I may interject here, this item 5 is just to authorize the process to begin so that we can have those conversations with the ad hoc committee. So this is just the council authorizing staff to move forward with this architectural firm so that we can begin that planning process, then we can develop plans, and we have an idea of what we want to budget to proceed with the repairs for these facilities.
Sure, thank you for that clarification. But as I previously stated, I think it would be appropriate for that to be under the purview of the to-be-formed ad hoc committee if the council's will is to do so.
Okay.
And if I may, just to add in a comment too, the two they can coexist. I guess this is a contract for design work, engineer work, and then if there is an ad hoc committee or a design review committee formed, they can still request, or again, I'm getting ahead here because I know we're going to talk about that in a bit, but they can still request to be a part of that design and review. But this is just a contract with an organization to get the ball rolling, and then ultimately they can still have the collaboration.
Okay, so yeah, because like there's several pieces in item 5 that were that pricked my ears, if you would so to speak. And the design elements, what parts of the building are to be worked on, what are we going to use, what all that stuff. So I wanted to make sure that we didn't go too far, like I said, cart before the horse, because that's what this feels like. In reading item 5, it felt like there was a whole bunch of stuff in this, like a ton of language in this item that would probably be very, very good for the ad hoc committee to have their eyes and opinion on. I don't think it's unreasonable just to request that we push 5 off until 418, so we could have a chance to form, if it's the council's will, to form the ad hoc committee in 13, and then allow the ad hoc committee to be formed and then do exactly what it's supposed to do, which is watch these items as they come up.
What's the council's wishes to do on item number, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, Councilman Riggs, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that perspective. I know that the contract period normally takes a number of weeks for signing and things like that. And I think that it's important to distinguish that an ad hoc committee would help advise and would help provide direction, but they're not going to be the engineers and architects. And so I think that it's important that we allow those professionals and our staff to do that, with the partnership of council to provide insight and advice and preferences on work that has priority. So for me, I feel like moving 5 until our next council meeting, although if we create an ad hoc committee, there will be integration in between those, I think that it might slow us down in a way that isn't necessary. That's all.
There was someone else in the queue.
Sure.
Oh, Councilman Thompson, please.
I guess hearing more clarification on this, I mean, at first when I was listening to Mr. Weber, I agree with him that is there any, looks like remodel for the bathrooms in the Scout House, just to kind of echo what Councilman Weber said, just for the that concern. Is there any imperativeness or any urgency to move this item forward? Because here shortly in a couple hours, potentially is going to be ad hoc committee, and then just that concern would be resolved.
The City Hall restrooms and lobby came at the request of City Council, so I'm moving forward with that request.
I'm fine with the small delay, just for that concern. Yeah.
Okay.
Just my 2 cents.
Your 2 cents. So, what do we want to do with item number 5? Do you want to hold on to it, or do you want to move it?
Well, I move that we move it to 418 and let us see how item number 13 rolls out today. And then we could readdress item 5 on 418.
Sounds like that's a motion. Do I hear a second?
I got a second.
Okay, motion seconded to move item number 5 to after the last item, which is the item he's talking about.
So are we moving it to the next meeting or at
No,
418?
this council meeting. Just moving it after.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I didn't say that. I was suggesting we move it to 418.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's my understanding.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, sorry, I didn't
should have
understand it that way.
clarified.
I thought we were taking it back. Okay.
So the motion is to move the item to postpone it to 418.
Well, before we make the vote, Riggs, do you have a?
Yeah, my follow-up question is to Ms. Nevers. Do you foresee any significant delays with doing that, or moderate delays? Do you have any concerns to weigh in on that?
No, it's just a 2-week delay for getting the process started and getting estimates to then put into the next fiscal year budget.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. And when are budget items due for the next fiscal year?
The end of April. So, and this is still, we can push this, that's fine. There's no issue with pushing it. I just brought it forward at the request of council. We threw the Scout House in there because that is a building that has been in
Needs a lot.
need of some attention for over 30 years now. So that was why we had wanted to bring that forward with this budget cycle as well.
And just to clarify, I believe it's April 14th initial budget requests are due, and then ultimately, obviously, we'll be working on the
Yeah.
budget's going to be gaining a lot of momentum here in the next few
Yeah,
weeks.
we requested for everybody to have everything by 4/14.
Okay, thank you.
So that would not allow them to have a accurate depiction of needs for
Potentially,
their
could put it
414.
in there as a preliminary,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Be added later. If we're pushing it to the next council meeting at 4/18, is that what?
Yeah, if we push to the 18th, and ultimately, by the time they get work done, completed, we're going to have to. I don't know if we'll be able to get an estimate by early May.
At the earliest, early May.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of time that goes into this.
Yeah.
Okay, I see Vice Mayor Smith on the queue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question as to the process of reaching out to Galloway and Associates, and maybe we can reconsider what's been put on the table. Did you have preliminary discussions as to some of the thoughts and ideas with the front of the house? By the way, I think this is wonderful. We need to have a refresh on our face as a city when people come, especially the professionals that are coming to our city now with hopes and dreams of doing and building great things in our community. And so I think we need to have that professional front face. And so I'm real excited about this. That being said, I think what the concern, if I'm listening to Councilman Weber, in that initial outreach with Galloway and Associates, if there was some preliminary, just general conversation in establishing that, I think it was $50,000 to begin to work on that. If there was some initial communication and outlay of some of the ideas that were presented, and if that was the case, that perhaps that's where the ad hoc committee could have had some input in that initial process. So if that's the case, then maybe it would be appropriate to delay it. I would be in agreement with that. If it was just simply an outreach and there was and none of that happened, then maybe we could move forward with this now. But I guess I'd need to hear from you what that process looked like.
So it was outreach with a site visit to each location so that they could put their eyes on the proposed project areas and put together what they deemed a realistic scope to accommodate what the city's request would be for a remodel of these locations.
Yeah, and so therein lies, I think, listening to Councilman Weber's input. And by the way, the mayor, he has the privilege of appointing several of us to that committee, and I'm in support of whoever the mayor decides from the dais. I think any one of us or two of us would be sufficient. And I just got the sense that, I think you're kind of looking for some of that, the collaboration with the council. And I think that also just kind of helps insulate you in that process as well, moving forward. But again, I think I'm just hearing the heart there of Councilman Weber. And, and that's why there was the request to maybe have a pause on this. And given your answer, I would be in favor of holding off to the 18th. That is the answer.
See Councilman Goodson in the queue.
Yes, I'm just wondering, is there a reason why we can't move item 13 forward now?
No, we can certainly move to another item on the agenda now and then readdress this later if maybe that gets us to the right point.
We can do that. Is that the council?
That is my hope. That is my hope. Thank you.
Smith, are you still in the queue?
No.
No. Okay. So Councilman Thompson.
Thanks. I'm fine with moving 13 up. I just don't think that would scratch the itch that Councilman Weber is regarding, because there's no time for the committee to review.
And
or
maybe
to
I
meet
can,
with.
and Don, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I know sometimes we contract with a design, architectural, engineering firm and rely on their expertise. So again, I'm haven't been involved in the full process of this front office, this northeast corner. I imagine we're contract with them to give us some ideas. They're the experts. They know. They've seen what's out there. They know some efficient office operations. And I guess ultimately, so I don't think we've given them a lot of detail. So I think we can still provide that input. If a committee is formed tonight, we can still provide them more specificity is where I'm getting. So I think we can get there. But I am anxious to talk a little bit more details when we get to the next item. But I'll leave it at that for now. But
Your assessment is correct.
Okay.
So the other thing I'll mention, if I could, Mr. Mayor, is that this is a professional services agreement. So if it's approved, you can certainly instruct them to not start any work until the whoever's on the ad hoc committee is in place and gets some discussion going with them.
I'm fine with that.
And again, it would get you to the same place of
Great.
you've got the agreement approved. They just don't start anything until there's some discussion going on.
Yeah, I'm good with that. That sounds reasonable. That's, you guys all did a fantastic job of scratching my itch. Thank you very much.
So we had a motion and a second.
I'll remove my motion.
So
my
we
second.
remove that motion then. All right? Is that clear for the clerk? Okay.
And thank you for putting it on the agenda.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to these bathrooms being remodeled at City Hall.
So do we want to move to item 13 now?
Are we?
Again, it's at the pleasure of the council. If you want to move to 13 now, you can do that. If you want to go ahead and approve this and then just keep going as
Okay.
is, up to you.
I would like to approve item number 5 as understanding we have this. We can start date whenever we wish. So I would entertain a motion for item number 5. Smith, are you
So
still in the
moved.
queue? Vice Mayor Smith?
So moved.
Okay, we got a
Yeah,
second.
I was just going to make one more comment, but sounds to me like we're going to move forward with this anyway. And my comment was just to the initial site visit that had you had a council, a couple of ad hoc committee members, maybe they would have looked at that and said, maybe we want to do 3,000 feet. In other words, you would have had more input. I don't know how we established 2,000 square foot of review, but in looking at that space and the initial dollar values associated with looking at that architectural design. I guess I'm just stating that we might have wanted to expand that or shrink it back a little bit. I'm just not sure what that process looked like as to how the 300 square foot made sense, the bathroom area, that's pretty well established. But then how much of the lobby and those adjacent offices do we want to then tackle? That there may be, and it sounds like there's going to be opportunity for discussion and expansion of that anyway. But that was just some additional comments that I wanted to make.
Thank you. Councilman Riggs?
Thank you. I just wanted to share that your point, Vice Mayor Smith, is well taken, and this body is not unfamiliar with change orders.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
if
What?
expansion were to be needed, a change order can be made and we'll move forward as planned. So I think that it's, we'll probably see change orders no matter what. Mm-hmm. And just prepare for that and know that if we were to create this ad hoc committee and they go one way with another direction, then that's totally appropriate and we make a change order to reflect that. But from what I read in the service agreement, that it is fairly well reflected of what has been directed to staff to look at for remodel and for redesign for our City Hall. And so I do want to applaud staff that they took the concerns of this council and are addressing those, and then also applaud this council that not only do we want those addressed, but we want to be a part of those conversations along the way. That shows a level of commitment that is, I think, really unique and can be really exciting.
Councilman Weber in the queue.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any problem with this doing 5, but I would like it to be noted that I would like to re-examine the scope of work per Vice Mayor Smith's comments about how big the scope of work would be, so maybe we could have a conversation with that. So I'd like that to be reinserted before we go too far with the firm. And also, I'm good with the 5 as long as it will fall. If we voted on 5 now, I'm good as long as it falls under the purview of the ad hoc or to be formed ad hoc committee if it's the council's will. So I'm good with either. So just so long as we'll all move forward in that way where we know exactly what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. So, and I understand what you're saying about change orders, but we could avoid change orders now if we just set this up properly on the front end of it. So, thank you,
Mr. Mayor. I do have Councilmember Goodson so moved the motion, and
Right.
I had added the language that says that the contracts will be held off on until after the council or architectural ad hoc committee meets. So that's what I have right now.
Okay.
And I have a first, I don't have a second. Councilmember Goodson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, item number 10, is that the next regular business item to work on? Just to make sure, because I've bounced around this agenda all night here. All right, item number 10 is selection of the 2023 Samuel J. Norris Award for Excellent Recipient. How are we going to conduct the vote? By hand, paper, or? Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have, so just for those of you, I'm not sure if everyone knows what the Sam Norris Award is. The Samuel J. Norris Award is an award for excellence where each year the council honors an individual who has exhibited where they have done a lot of deeds in the community to improve the quality of life in the community. And so this year, our nominations were Bud Bolt and Jan Hill. And so I will be handing each of you a ballot. If you'll fold it up and hand it back to me. All I will be telling the council today is that you guys have selected a nominee. The actual nominee will be revealed to the public at the State of the City on April 25th at 6 o'clock. And the 2 that are online have voted through text message.
Will the nominators be alerted ahead of the event at the State of the City? Thank you.
And for full disclosure, once the individual has been identified, you can't have any secret ballots as a council member. So how you vote will be disclosed in the minutes of this meeting.
Yeah.
But we're trying to keep it just under wraps for now.
As an individual, so we need to put our name on this?
You do need to put your name on the slips.
Thank you.
That way we comply with all of the Brown Act requirements.
Yeah, I put it next to spot.
You better shuffle them up, yeah. Thank you, Wes.
I know.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
If I may, would you mind if I recognize Carolyn Fairbanks being here?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to recognize Carolyn Fairbanks for being here because I don't want to disclose what you've been going through, but I know you've been going through some really hardcore things.
Thank you.
And to see you here and it really just warms my heart. And I'm just super appreciative for you being here. And it looks like you're getting victory, so that's awesome. So I just wanted to acknowledge you being here. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor and Council, we do have a clear winner, and so we will be honoring that person at the State of the City, along with the Voice of the Arts Award that you guys approved in the consent calendar,
All right.
and
Thank
all
you.
of the students that we we postponed from a couple meetings back.
Well, thank you for all the applications we received, and we thank the council for the process. And the Sam Norris is a long history here, and there'll be the one chosen will be put it on the plaque out front and added to the individuals supporting Oroville. Number 11, the letter from the YMCA requesting city partnership in a building downtown swimming pool / attraction. Will let City Administrator Ring.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we did receive a letter at the request of Councilmember Johnstone and Councilmember Weber. We received this letter from the YMCA requesting a partnership with the city to bring a pool to the downtown area of Oroville. Ultimately, I think we all realize that they recently closed the doors on their swimming pool, and they referenced the fact that there seems to be a need for additional aquatic services for swim lessons, adult programs, potentially swim meets for high schools. So again, they're requesting some sort of partnership with the city just to evaluate the options that might be available to bring a pool to Oroville.
Do we have any speakers on this?
Mr. Mayor, I have one speaker, Don Noble. I also have Councilmember Goodson in the queue. And
okay. We'll let Mr. Noble up first, then I'll get to the councilman.
Okay.
Mayor Pittman, council members, Eric and Janet, I hope you're feeling better. My name is Don Noble, and as someone who's given a lot of thought to this topic of a new downtown swimming facility over quite a few years, and I know you're aware of this, I was pleased to see the idea reappear on our front page just the other day. The need has been ongoing for decades. For those who may not be aware, here's some history. The construction of the dam in 1968 effectively ended the warm water swimming opportunities the Feather River had always provided for downtown Oroville. Some of you may have seen the old images of the early 20th century of an old 2 by 12 stuck into the bank and kids bouncing off that directly into the refreshing water. As part of the settlement agreement, the DWR was required to investigate, quote, investigate alternatives for warm water swimming, including off-site pools and water activity centers, unquote. That obligation to mitigate the loss has yet to be fulfilled. The last publicly owned swimming facility was the Feather Plunge on Washington Avenue. Only the old-timers can remember that. It now it's a bus yard, so you might see the buses there. You can still see the wall on the old entrance into the Feather Plunge. So that's been gone for 50 years. The Supplemental Benefits Steering Committee has had a long-standing ad hoc aquatic center committee which produced several recommendations which have yet to become a reality. Mm-hmm. More recently, the need has become even more acute with the YMCA's decision to close their downtown pool. In addition, though it's impacted the need for recreation in general, was a recent decision by the FRPD to close its activity center. Though there's no time to list them here and now, I believe there are several reasons the time might be right to finally make a swimming facility a reality in the near future. To me, there are two big takeaways from Ms. Gottsman's article. First, to be sustainable, an eventual swim facility needs to be in conjunction with other attractions. Second, the only chance of making it happen is through a collaboration between a broad range of local entities. Finally, I know for a fact, and this is probably the last time this made a newspaper, aquatic park proposed for Oroville. The reaction online was huge. Mm-hmm. There were 170 likes, 115 comments, all of them positive, and 50 shares. So if there's any way I can be of help, count me in.
Don, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, we have Councilman Johnstone on the queue.
You actually have
I've got Goodson too. She's coming up next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I just really thought that this would be a great community investment for not only our youth, but our elderly I think that for the high schools, putting on swim meets, we can garner interest in just recreation in general if we do this right. And so I am all in favor for discussions on ways that we can find the funding to do this. I think it's highly important that, especially with the loss of the YMCA pool and the Feather River closing down, we need it. And so I hope that we can support ways of making this happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. One other thing. So there is just something that we could replicate and maybe research a little bit. Carson Valley Swim Center, I believe that's in Nevada, is an aquatic park that is highly successful. So I don't know if that would be something that we would consider researching or not, but I would encourage us to do so. Thank you.
Councilman Thompson and then Councilman Goodson.
Councilwoman Goodson can go before me. I know that she was.
Okay. Councilman Goodson, you're up.
Yeah. Thank you. I've spoken with a couple of people in regards to this agenda item. And so I recall back in, if my memory serves me correctly, prior to maybe 2014, 2015, that there was talk and there were plans, and the city had invested quite amount of money in consultants in regards to a water park on the levee. And so I'm not sure where this swimming pool would be positioned, but this is just FYI information. I believe it was there is a cement core that runs excuse me, the length of that levee. And I believe that the Army Corps of Engineers would not allow a compromise to the levee. So I just wanted to get clarification on that. Perhaps, Dawn, perhaps this project you're looking at another place, but I do not believe that the levee is an option.
With recent conversations with the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency and the recertification of our levee, we have been deep into the evaluation of the previously engineered plans for that levee. And so before we decide on this specific location, we just needed to confirm that this location to the east of the convention center would support this type of facility. And so I've spoken with City Administrator Ring, and we are looking at other potential locations, just as a cautionary that this might not be this best location for this pool.
Thank you, Don.
Yeah, and if I may, just obviously we don't ever want to get ahead of the council and what direction the council gives this evening, but ultimately we've had discussions. Obviously, we all received the letter, we received the request to get on the agenda, and in my mind there's a handful of things here. One is, what exactly would the council like to see, because it could range from a swimming pool that houses swim meets, maybe some other activities, to a full-blown aquatic center. And obviously, those are two significantly different types of facilities. So ultimately, what are we looking at from that perspective? Then that will really indicate or drive to what kind of locations we're looking at, what the needs are from where a facility like this could be housed. And then ultimately, the third component is of course the dollars and cents in the funding, and how could we partner potentially with schools, potentially with, I know I mentioned DWR, because it's going to take a partnership, because I would guess that a basic swimming pool is going to be over $10 million, a basic Olympic-sized swimming pool. If you're looking at an aquatic center, again, I think there was reference from Councilmember Goodson about the study that was done. I looked at that. I think the estimate on that was $58 million. So there's a wide range of options here. So I'll put that out there for the council to.
Yeah. Councilman Thompson.
Thank you. I am absolutely highly in favor of the city looking into a community aquatic center. I think the community has been asking, and requesting something like this for quite a while. So that idea, 100%. You're going to get 100. It's funny, I got braces, and so my speech feels so weird.
You'll get used to it.
Thanks. So that part, 100%. Unfortunately, right now, I don't have confidence in regarding the partnership with the YMCA. I would be more in regards to this specific item. I'd be more in favor of the city looking into this with a collaborative effort, but it being a city thing. And if we want to lease it out, we want to see business plans and whatnot, in the same way that we have our convention center and it's currently leased. The reason why I mentioned that regarding an uneasiness with the specific partnership with the YMCA is I do know several people who have been using their recently closed pool, and the let's just say the reviews aren't very high as far as the management and communication and the fact that it just closed. So so that's, otherwise, as far as the why and what they're doing with the convention center, great. But yeah, as far as the other part of it, I don't have confidence with that right now. I'd want, if there was like high reviews and it was, the people that have been going were super happy, to expand the program would be more like great. But if the current program didn't appear to be successful or the clients were happy and whatnot, then to expand an already program that didn't have satisfaction, it doesn't quite make sense to me.
Okay, Councilman Johnstone, please.
Thank you. I mean, at this point, the YMCA, maybe not. I don't know. I'm open for discussion on that. I would like to see this be a citywide, countywide, maybe even, I don't know, probably citywide, get the schools involved. I would love to see it be a collaborative effort and is a city-owned, maybe, with partners. At this point, I don't know. I just want to start the discussion. It's highly needed. I'm all for an aquatic center rather than just a community pool. I would like, as part of our rebranding even, have that as an offering for other cities to be able to come and hold meets here and not have to travel all the way to Chico or those kinds of things. So whatever discussions we can do on that. Feather River, the building that just closed, I don't know, what it's even going to be for sale on, but I mean, it's large, it's got land, what does that look like? So that's a suggestion maybe.
Councilman Weber, if you're done.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I got a lot here. So I think that what Councilmember Johnstone's asking for, and I think I agree with, is a feasibility. Like we look at the feasibility of what this looks like. I think that we absolutely, what you said, sir, is absolutely correct, that we need a warm water facility to service our community. And frankly, there's a lot of senior citizens that have traditionally went to those bodies of water, or the one that's just closed downtown anyway, for exactly that sort of recreation, swimming opportunity, exercise. So there's several ways to go with this, but I want to start by saying this. I agree with Councilmember Goodson in that she is accurate. There is some limitations as to what we could do on the levee, and from what I understand, and somebody in here that knows better than me, but I understand there's a fiber optic cable buried along the top of that levee as well that services our entire community. And now, how and why it got there, I don't know, but it's there from what I understand. So it's pretty much an untouchable area. And so, and parking would be a huge problem if we built it on the levee. The ODBA would be screaming their heads off about parking because they already are screaming their heads off about parking, and rightfully so. With larger events, it's very limited. So with that being said, I don't know, in my personal opinion, I have to agree with Councilmember Goodson that perhaps that might not be the best location. But I think that we could, per what, which, Dawn, did you say we're looking at alternative? Okay, we're looking at what we own?
Yes.
Okay, and then maybe alternative even purchase sites?
Correct.
Okay, so that's great, because I have some sites in mind myself if we want to pursue that. But before I go any further on that, this is kind of my vision. Okay, and so to your point, Mr. Ring, the cost would be astronomical. Were you saying it was $58 million for the Carson Valley Swim Center?
No, that was there was a study done, I believe it was in 2015, I believe, and that was a study back then for the a facility here in Oroville.
Okay,
Yeah.
my apologies. I was writing.
That's
and I
okay.
thought you said the
But-
Carson Swim Center was $58
But I
million.
can tell you the group that is doing Gardnerville, they're also developing one in Reno called Moana Springs, and it's $54 million for that.
Yeah, well, that's also a community of nearly 500,000 people. So, general. So, I think that we could probably do something for 10 to 15 million. But the funding, to your point, Mr. Ring, also is, obviously we could go through DWR to get some money, possibly. I'm thinking that we could do a collaborative effort with education because our two high schools don't have any pool that they could leverage. They have to go, if we have a meet, they have to go somewhere else. And so that's another form of revenue that could be generated. When you have meets, it generates a lot of revenue for the city, especially the where they meet at. The grants, this would be a hefty thing to lift, but I think it would be worth doing. The aquatic center or a community center is really what I'm envisioning, okay? Like a hub of activity, pools with lanes, a slide, splash zone, a lazy river, indoor basketball / pickleball, possible collaboration with other community service providers. Okay, now I can't go out and speak, but I mean, what would it look like to have other service providers in there offering community service related services that are very vital? For instance, could we have like a computer lab in there that could service our youth? Can we have Taekwondo in there? Could we have something similar to, or if not, the Axiom in there? I don't know. And could we house something like that in there? And maybe the way I like to do this is I like to shoot it super, super high and see what we could grab. If there's low-hanging fruit that we could grab it. But maybe we could find a path to the super, super high. How do we get there? So you mentioned, Councilmember Johnstone, the building that Feather River is just about to give up. That could be a possibility to look at, because I'm going to tell you right now, just that with my limited scope of understanding how large-scale building projects like that go, that parking lot would probably be $1 million alone just for the parking lot. Or the utility hookups for that building would be astronomical to do. So would the building be ideal in my mind's eye as far as the vision that I have? Probably not. However, I think that it's a building that could potentially be looked at to a full retrofit like you're talking about. I've been in that building before, and it's kind of, but maybe possibly that might be an option, because there's definitely land behind the building to build a pool. So, but that might, so those are some of my thoughts on that. Let me check my notes and make sure I covered all my notes here.
And I think I know somebody's going to donate it.
Huh? What's that?
I tried. Yeah, that's right.
Can I approach again? Would that be appropriate? I've already spoken.
Let's let the Councilman Weber finish his comment, and we'll let the
I'm done. Thank you very much. I went on far enough.
Councilman Rigg.
Oh, it's my turn.
Yes.
I'm recovering from a cold, and so sometimes when it's my turn, it's surprising. A few things that I wanted to talk about or share in this conversation. First, I'm so glad that everybody's so passionate about bringing recreation opportunities to our community. I am too. That makes me so happy to hear everybody else on board for that. I do want to share a few things. I do have concerns about building a aquatic center or aquatic park, and because of the cost of maintenance and creation, all of those things. On the other side of that thought is we have access to bodies of water throughout our whole community that we could be using and capitalizing on in order to make such opportunities for water recreation available. I'm not saying anybody wants to spend a ton of time a lot in the river because it is chilly, I know that. However, at the forebay, young people go to the forebay and there's this little dock, and the kids play king of the dock, and all they do is push each other off the dock. Now, that is a warm body of water. And there is already a system in place for rentals for kayaks, paddleboards, things like that. My dream and vision, and I think would be really cool for our community, is a floating water park so kids can play on something other than a dock.
Okay.
So
Go ahead and finish.
in that, including things such as a floating mechanism that has, say, slides and trampolines and all of those things that are interconnected, that, you buy a wristband to and you're on it for 2 hours, 5 hours, whatever, as a recreational opportunity for summer. Now, because it is a floating thing and it's not a permanent installment, you're also able to bypass some of the permanent changes and regulations that might be required for other activities. The other thing is that we did just have a conversation about Bedrock Park and how we could improve swim opportunities and recreation opportunities along Bedrock Park, which is, I think, a value of our community. It's walkable, it's accessible, it's related to other areas within our city, and we could do a little bit more investment in that area in order to really maximize opportunity there. And then the next item that I want to talk about is that we have a multi-million-dollar grant in place right now to renovate Hewitt Park, and part of that includes a splash pad, which serves the needs of our younger little kiddos to play in the water. And then my question is, and I don't know if anybody knows this, the Nelson Pool remodel, does it have a swim meet regulation size pool or not?
Yes.
I'm getting yeses and nos.
No, yes,
so,
it does.
I think that it is important for, if we are to have this conversation, that we expand the scope from, say, pool or built, but really expand the scope of what are the water-based recreation or recreation opportunities within our community, beyond just a pool or a pool-type facility. Really look at what are all of the opportunities we have and how can we best use our money. Because $10 million is a lot, $50 million is a lot more. And I hate, I'm going to bring it up. I didn't think I was going to. I'd hate for us to go down the line of we're going to have a whitewater rafting park and spend a ton of time and money saying we're going to do this thing, and for it to not happen. I'd rather us look at, hey, what can we do right now? What can we get done? Let's make those opportunities happen. And then evaluate, okay, now do we have the capacity for something more extreme and exciting?
Okay, Vice Mayor Smith, you're next in the queue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, actually, the city did spend some money a few years back looking at the possibility of a whitewater through the feather, down the feather through town, amongst other things. To Mr. Don Noble's comments about DWR and the commitment of warm water replacement with the building of the dam and the chilling of the river. Along those lines, within the settlement agreement, there is a plan to build a lagoon up at Loafer Creek. I, for the last several years, have been encouraging DWR to reopen up and to reevaluate the recreation plan. And I've been leaning on them to reimagine and re-envision that lagoon and bring it closer to town. So I guess what I'm saying is there are multiple options, and given the amount of funding that's necessary, I think, to really bring forth a vision of something that would be just amazing, a water-type park. There's just a lot of opportunity, I think, floating around out there, no pun intended. And so, and I think to Councilwoman Goodson's point about the feasibility of the levy, and given what we've already heard about some concerns with the levy, I think that's really premature. Obviously, it would have to have an engineering look at that. There's a lot that goes into that, and I think to the point of Councilman Weber's comments about the concerns of the downtown, although that could be a blessing too if you had something like that and you're bringing in a lot of folks. But I guess what I'm trying to just insinuate here is that this is probably premature, and I think also to the comment of Councilman Thompson about with the YMCA and perhaps some of the concerns there. I think we ought to just have the eyes and the ears of the staff, looking about and looking for opportunities as to how, knowing our heart and our will and our desire to bring something like this to Oroville, and just to see what those opportunities, might avail of themselves to us regarding this. But I'm really kind of hopeful with the light when the dam eventually gets relicensed, hopefully in our lifetime, that some of those conversations about the recreation plan and how that whole plan can be reimagined and brought closer to Oroville to I think fulfill those commitments. I'm an optimist, and I think that would be amazing. And anyway, so that's kind of my thoughts on it. But I just think that perhaps at this point, it sounds to me like it's a little premature to step into this with the Y at this time anyway, without some more research and information gathering as to how we might be able to see this through.
Councilman Thompson.
Thank you. Just regarding this specific item, back to the letter with the YMCA recommendation that I would not be to go in agreement with the YMCA, but for staff to investigate opportunities and locations. So moving forward, but not necessarily a partnership with the Y. And if I could request, if the city council staff could look into what it would take to purchase that facility down on Feather River that's being closed by the Feather River Recreation Park District.
$5 million.
What's that?
$5 million.
If we are going to do a aquatic center or a pool, like Councilman Weber mentioned, just the current infrastructure of how much that would save if we did have that. So at least looking at our options. But back to this item, my recommendation would not be to go into partnership with the Y on this one.
Councilman Weber.
Thank you. I also would like to, as we look into the feasibility of this, what's going to end up happening, there's going to be a vacuum or a void of any pool at all. So I would like to explore what it might look like if it's financially feasible for us to look at what kind of repairs this pool needs right down here, downtown, to possibly invest into some of the repairs it might need to continue its operation, because it does service a lot of our at-risk community, mainly, in my mind, the bookends of at-risk are youth and seniors. And so I would like to see us not be void of the ability to service either of those groups. So maybe we can, as we do look into this, we could look at what that might look like, if that's even feasible. I have no idea what kinds of repairs it needs. But everyone likes variety and flavor, and you're absolutely right, Councilmember Riggs, that Hewitt Park is going to be amazing when we get it done. And so, I like to, in that movie Field of Dreams, there's a saying that says, if you build it, they will come. And not only are we trying to build parks for who lives here now that are really great, and aquatic centers and community centers and all that stuff, but we're also trying to entice would-be investors that want to come to our town to offer up services and facilities for their children as well. So I think some family-centric activities distributed throughout the community, even to your point, Councilmember Riggs, about the After Bay and all we could look at all kinds of stuff, because we could do a really good job of making a very appealing location for families to come to. Personally, I'd like to see some private developers come in and do some cool stuff like go-kart tracks. I don't know, stuff like that as well. But that's for another discussion. So anyway, if we could, as we do examine that, maybe we could look at what this pool needs to function, to fix it? Because that might be one of the cheapest things that could be done to keep a warm body of water right downtown. I don't know,
So, Mr. Mayor, if I might, just to sort of be the parliamentarian here, to bring it back to the issue at hand.
Right.
Because we could talk about all kinds of other different ideas and, all different, off-location stuff. I think the direction that I heard was to have staff look at every option, pool-related, look at all of the various options, including what would it cost to fix this one? What would it cost to maybe buy a land and build a new one, as well as maybe a joint use agreement with the high schools. I think staff can explore all of those. The one benefit that you may get with that is high schools do get, while the state doesn't currently have any money in that fund, that high schools do get, and I love the term, the state calls it matching dollars, which is exactly about 34%. So it's not matching at all. But they do get some money reimbursed. So it might be good to partner with the school district because then they can do swim meets, water polo tournaments, that kind of thing. And then you can add on maybe, to whatever the design is. But I think that what I heard was to explore all of the options that I just enumerated and then to come back with something for the council.
And I waited for everyone patiently, and they didn't.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This is one study Don Noble did for a pool that we worked on, and it was different locations. There's a 2015 study the SBF funded for a site location for a multiple pool. There's a whitewater study that I was a part of that we could have put in the river, but the RDAs were abolished, and the RDA was our funding mechanism, so thank you very much, State of California. There's a long history of it. I attended the Whitewater Conference in New Orleans on these type of parks, and so there's a huge amount of information there. You all have good points. I mean, it certainly fits a niche, and they're all possibilities. And the letter from the Y, I met with her when they knew they were going to be closing that facility down. And I said, well, for us to continue, you just need to send a letter of interest. And that's what it is. It's a letter of interest. It offers a partnership based upon their running many other water facilities throughout the nation. They run about 6 of them here in Northern California. So that would be places to check out and look at, certainly different than what we have today. My preference for this would be to push this to not only staff but also to the executive committee to help shepherd it along with the issues, because I think the executive committee it's a good function, and that's what it's for. And because we're looking at a lot of serious amount of money, and I've been to the one at Gardnerville, Nevada. That one was formed under a district. They spend a district for that swim. They call it the swim center, and that is multi-use. I want to use the term diapers to wheelchairs, essentially the use pattern there. So it does function there, but they needed to do that because they didn't have any water to play in. So it's and it's an indoor facility. So there's a lot of possibilities here that reach across Oroville and a lot of venues. I'll tell you, one of the big problems in putting any facility in a natural river stream is you're going to have to treat the water in California. So don't expect that you're going to be able to use the water and then just let it go down river. That's not going to happen in California. So that creates another problem and whatnot. So there's a lot of things to look at, and we certainly have a wide breadth of options. But I would like to just move this whole issue with council direction that, yes, we want to see some kind of swim center, pool center, whatever, and then bring it back to council after we've investigated. I think would be the safest way to go at this point. I will tell you, they shared with us the issues with their current pool, and it's pretty monumental. I mean, it's monumental. It's very expensive to fix, and the gain versus the investment is the difficult thing. In fact, they're offering their entire center, the buildings and all, so that scenario. So you've expressed a lot of options here tonight, and I think if we had it on the exec committee with a positive, yes, we want to see something, now we're not really sure what it is, and create that down the line. We do have some funding sources. It was a commitment in the SBF in terms of a warm water facility, and I've met with many of those folks, but we really have to sit down with state water contractors and look for some kind of advance on the commitment to the SBF. And I'm not sticker shocked by what it'll cost. Somewhere between 20 and 30 million, I think, is a minimum. And that's just from my investigation to the other centers throughout this time. And like I said, I was in the RDA when we were hopefully to put one, and then the governor shut down the RDAs and we didn't have that funding source anymore. So if by consensus of council, if you want to move this to the exec committee, I'd be happy to take care of it that way and bring it that way, and staff can work with that. And
yeah. You know, I think that's a great idea. Obviously, exec committee, ad hoc, some committee, because again, there's been a lot of ideas here, and I want to make sure we don't
well, I
miss
think
anything.
the exec committee has heard all the ideas, and can bring them together. We'll sit down and list them all. They're all recorded, and we can, you know, yay or nay or whatever the case may be. And I'll tell Councilman Riggs it's called a Tarzan platform, and it's about $55,000. And it's a floating swim center that you just put on the water, and it has everything. Look it up on Google. It's called the Tarzan Swim Center. Yes, they are, and it could easily be pontooned in the river here very easily. So it's actually on a trailer. So we have options, and I certainly would like to explore that. And we can make ourselves be the whitewater center of California. So,
you know, Mr. Mayor, if I may add one more thing just to add to the list is I'm not sure if everyone saw recently the city of Chico has partnered with CARD, and they're doing something very similar. They just had some land donated to them from Ken Grossman. And so it might be something that good to see exactly what they are doing. And certainly if I don't know if we want to directly replicate something that they're doing. Might want to diversify.
I've reviewed that. What's about $20 million for what they're planning on doing, and their big issue is they were donated the land from Ken. So.
Exactly.
Thank you for all the discussion and appreciate the dialogue from the public. And I certainly understand that there's a strong support for something here, whether it's a pool, a competition. I was a swim team parent for 7 years, so I understand the swim team issues all up and down the California. And all three of my kids were very heavily into all that. So we need to have that as a basis here for at least 6 lanes, maybe 8. And then your events are huge. They're happening every weekend in the summer, and they get very large. And then the big one in Shasta used to be the 3-day weekend, and that was about 5,000 swimmers. So if we could attract that, we'd be very successful with it. So thank you for all your comments and inquiries. Yes, sir.
Just an unashamed boast on my niece's #1 in the state in certain swim divisions in the state of Idaho.
Cool.
So.
She needs to come.
Yeah.
Right. She's looking into the Olympics. So
cool. We've actually, in this area, the Northern Cali Swim have produced, I think, 3 Olympians into the Olympics from the whole group of that over in the past. And we've had many good, strong swimmers from the Orcas team. So it's a good thing. Right now, they practice out at the Palermo pool, which is in need of repair.
It's closed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be back at Nelson this year.
And they'll be back. And Nelson is all done. It's looking good. The first opening weekend, they had 140 kids there, and the second day it went to more. They had to bring in more lifeguards. So it's definitely, the need is there. It's easy to say the prediction. And then, like I say, we have many studies that have been done on this topic. And we can utilize those moving forward to, grab bits and pieces of what we actually need in the numbers part of the study. And there's a lot of experts in this particular category. But we have to be very careful because swim centers are not a positive income product. They don't generate positive income, but what they do present is positive experience, and that's a big deal. And everyone in this room remembers where they learned to swim. And there's a lot of folks that learn to swim at the Y-built pool. It's just not functional anymore. So appreciate the discussion, appreciate the letter from the Y, and certainly they may be a future partner down the road, or at least an advisor to the places. I know Grass Valley, Yuba City, and others. They're operating as a management tool, not as an owner operator. So we can look at those activities, and got a lot of information to dig into. And it's sad that one closed, but it just puts more impetus on us to produce something, whatever it may be. Thank you all. Okay, staff has direction on that. We're now up to item number 12. Who has that ring?
Yep, I'll do that one as well. So this was another request at the last council meeting. There were a number of discussions about potentially partially funding either some of the fireworks show for the 4th of July, or frankly even other projects or programs that will benefit the public in general. So talking with staff, there was previously back in 2016, I believe it was. When was it? Yeah, 2016, 2017, there was a thing called the benefits or the community enhancement budget unit, where there were some dollars that were budgeted on an annual basis where the council had some discretion. You would hear from community members on various projects where, hey, we'd like to see some support from the city on this. I believe it was probably discontinued due to funding matters, because again, it hasn't been in place since 2016, 2017. So I thought this might be an opportune way for, if we put some money in and recreate that budget unit, put some money in it, and then as council members hear of programs they'd like to advocate for, you can bring them before the council, and at least we have a finite amount of budgeted resources there that we're working with. So the idea here was to recreate that and fund it with $15,000 now for this fiscal year, and then that way, if there was a desire to potentially fund the fireworks show or other programs, it would be there to do so, and then we would reassess it and see if we have the funding available in future fiscal years.
Council questions, or do we have any speakers on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speakers on this item.
Thank you. Councilman Thompson, please, in the queue.
Thank you. Mayor Pittman, I know that you, in years past, have raised funds for this very project. Could you lend some insight regarding the amount of funds it would take to have a above average fireworks show for our community?
Sure, I'd be happy to offer some information. Typically, the contract with the pyrotechnician has been a $15,000 minimum amount.
That's like basic.
That's the basic. That's to get the contract to be made, and then we have added more fireworks based upon the donations received, up to $22,500, I think, which added more fireworks to the show. And because it was always been generated as a donation basis for the fireworks, we didn't know what was going to happen, so we had some minimum 15. And then as more came in, then we were able to make adjustments with the contractor to provide more fireworks. But the biggest show that we had was the Discover America show. I want to think that was around 28,000 that was on the dam.
That's correct.
Yeah, was it 28? Mm-hmm. My memory serves me well. And others have been in the $20,000 to $23,000 amount. Some of it, we weren't able to get in more rockets in, so the Rotary Club held over funds as a startup for the past year, and that was generally around $2,000 or $3,000 that came in after the donations. But this particular year, there was nothing left over. We shot the whole amount, so there's nothing in that kitty now. And then this year, the Rotary Club, actually at the last board meeting, has asked to have the chamber be lead agency on the fireworks because they're shifting to the Oroville Lights project. So they're focusing on that. So we're looking to the chamber to be the lead agency on the fireworks. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Just to continue on with my being in the queue, I'm of the persuasion with this to go big or go home. I know that a lot of communities spend a lot of money for advertisement. I think if you put on a large show, it's basically advertisement for the whole community. People come into town to watch, and I know that in any community that I've lived in as a family, it's always the question of who's going to have the show for the family, and that brings in, the community to the area to dine, to eat, to buy, and all that stuff. So. Mm-hmm. I am in favor of this, but I think 15 is pretty low. I would be more inclined to, even at a minimum, for 20 or more to start as a base. And because I mentioned this when I brought this up, that and I appreciate this being on the agenda, that even going to my birth town of Burley, Idaho, in the small town of Rupert, Idaho. I mean, I'm not sure if their fireworks are cheaper there in Idaho, but they know how to put on a fireworks show. And there were people that came from the region wide. I mean, that town was packed. It took forever just to get out because of the show. And I think for our businesses and our community, I think it'd be something for us to celebrate. So this corresponding as well with a larger flagpole and a larger flag, and let freedom ring in the city of Oroville.
Let me add to that. Your question you asked me is there are a number of cities that do fund a larger portion of the fireworks show. It's not without position to do so. The history of this used to be the DWR funded the show, and then they reduced their funding, and then it went through the chamber, and then 2013 we did not have fireworks, or 2012, either one of those 2 years. And then Rotary picked up the ball on a donation basis. So it's not without precedence in other cities for it, because this year, as I understand it, it would be held at the Forebay, and that's much more family-oriented and draws in much more what you're talking about, because the state has loosened up their requirements on use of the state facilities. So, and I believe the Tourism Committee has really supported the idea of the Forebay again, and the Nelson Ballpark, especially with Nelson Ballpark and the new swimming pool. It'll be a nice attraction. So I just wanted to answer your question a little better.
Thank you. And one last little note. Is it, I know, Mr. Councilman Weber, did you talk to Chief Tenzin regarding within the city limits, and did he say that that's not an option to have it within our city limits?
Yes, I did. I called Chief Tens regarding that because we were talking about possibly the like shooting them off in town or whatnot.
Yeah, the Harrison Stadium would be epic.
Yeah, he said that he said that the fire marshal of California would never sign off on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he said
the contractor has to have a 1,000-foot perimeter of uncombustible material. So 1,000-foot perimeter you got to start with just for the shooting, and then you got your people outside the 1,000 foot. So downtown is just not a possibility. I think never get a permit for it.
No, so I guess Idaho's got redneck rules.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was just going to say. It's different.
It's more of a 20-foot radius.
Yeah, 20 foot. Yeah.
How far it was away from the base.
Yeah. Chief Tens and I were talking about some of the equipment that he has, and I threw that question at him, and he was like, "Well, I would love to see that. That would be awesome, but it would never ever be approved."
No, they wouldn't get a permit. Councilman Vice Mayor Smith is on the queue next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, actually, if you went with a smaller shell size, you could draw in that range, but probably still would be a problem at Harrison Stadium, because some of that had to do, that 1,000 foot was because I think we were buying some of those 6-inch shells, and they required a larger radius. Given that I was the one that signed the contract with Pyrotechnics last year, it was just north of 22,000 for that show that we did out at the airport. And, there's a lot here to consider. If the city is going to be the lead agency, to do this, there's just a lot of questions that probably would need to be answered. I think you would, and then back to other cities doing this. In fact, I think there's 5 cities in the Sacramento metropolitan area that are actually doing this. Citrus Heights, I think, is putting on an 80,000 plus show for their community, and I think they're using some of the relief funds from the COVID time in order to fund some of those activities. But I think that probably would have to really sort through this as to what that looks like, who would be taking on the responsibility, because there's a lot in the coordination, as the mayor knows, coordinating and making these events work. There's a lot to consider. Does the staff feel that they can, take this on and do that? I think that we need to start there and see if the staff, Mr. Ring, if the city is in a position to coordinate a firework display and work with state parks and all that collaboration, and probably DWR would still be on board in some of the supportive infrastructure, whether it be porta potties and those types of things, without getting into all the detail, that they're still on board, at least partly, to help us do this. But I think the first question we have to be able to ask and have answered is the city in a position where the staff can spearhead this and pull all that together? That's a question.
I understand the question. I think we need to look at the agenda item, though, as it's been recommended that we raise the amount in this fund to, what was your number, 20? 20,000. Your topic is a little different because we're not committing anything. And so it's informational. I appreciate that. Councilman Riggs, please.
Thank you. There was a few things that I ended up getting confused on in that the Rotary used to put on the display, and they've asked the chamber to do it this year, and then now we're talking about maybe the city doing it. And I just want to say, I feel, I'm going to sound so terrible. I feel like our city finances and our staff time should really be spent meeting the needs, the long-term needs of our community. We have parks that need repairs and streets, and I want our city staff to really focus on things that are going to have a lasting, long-term positive effect on our community instead of one really exciting 4th of July. And so for me, I feel like I can get behind $15,000 or $20,000 in a community enhancement budget. But to me, that doesn't mean that all of it goes to fireworks. There's still an amazing group of supporters who are willing to donate and support a firework display. And that community engagement is healthy and good and should be utilized. But then there are also other components within our community that might fall underneath this budget. And I would hate for us to say, yeah, let's give 15 or 20 to fireworks. And we all have a really great 4th of July, eat as many hot dogs and as much pie as you want and watch the fireworks. That's great. But I would hate for us to be in a situation where we said yes to something that was good, and then we were left having to say no to something that is just as good or even possibly better. So I do like the 4th of July. I think it's great and that we should celebrate everything that our great nation is. I would just hate for us to go all in on something that is a single night impact and truly not a long-term impact. I want us to really focus on, hey, what are the things that really improve quality of life in our community?
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just really quick, just as the parliamentarian,
right.
This would only establish the committee and a budget for the committee. This would not commit any of the funds to any particular project, any particular, this is just,
right.
This is just to establish the, the community enhancement budget at a proposed 15,000. How it gets spent is a different matter for a different day.
Totally different. Yes, I agree. Councilman Weber, with that in mind?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so if you would allow me to just kind of vision cast. We've got two great festivals that are bookended at either end of the year. We got Feather Fiesta Days, which I think is going to make a roaring comeback this year. I think it's looking like it's going to shape up to be really good. And then we got Salmon Festival on the opposite end of it. And then we got various different things all throughout the year. But we got 4th of July kind of right in the middle of those two big ones. So what I propose here is we make this a calendar destination regional event by way of it's so attractive that not only are we going to serve our constituents with something that's really awesome, which by the way, Councilmember Riggs, I totally agree with you. I think that there's tons and tons of projects that we need to dump money into, no doubt. But I think that we could probably pull off both. And back to the calendar event, like a destination event, because we know that the Salmon Festival, Vice Mayor Smith will be able to testify on this, but we know that the Salmon Festival has done an unbelievable job at attracting people to come to our community just for that event. And Feather Fiesta Days traditionally has done that as well, and I think it's going to be a huge comeback. But I see this as an opportunity for us to take this moment and really invest into what this could be for an annual event. And what I would like to see is kind of like the vision here is like a 25-minute show, live bands, some food trucks. If it's going to be out at the Forebay, shuttles to transport folks from town from a location there, advertising, sound system, porta potties, and then we turn it into this family-centric event that is becomes that, like I said, a destination event. But so we're looking at 25 to 27,000 for a show that would be 25 minutes long, okay? Plus the other stuff. So I would guess that what we would have to allocate for this would be $35,000 to $40,000, okay? And so that would be the budget that I think we should look at to pay for all the other services too, to make it, if it was the council's desire to do that, to make this that destination, really awesome family town event. So, and I also wanted to give credit to Vice Mayor Smith too for this, because him and I were, I was with him when we started talking about this, because he was talking to me about the cost of the fireworks display last year. So he was also in the very beginnings of developing this. So I wanted to give him credit for it. And then I had a question for Vice Mayor Smith too. Vice Mayor Smith, how much approximately would it be for shuttles, do you think? Because I know you've done
3,000 to 4,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just and I might have been getting a little bit off of that. May I comment, Mr. Mayor?
Sure, go ahead.
Had my hand up.
Answer his question.
And I know we're kind of getting a little bit on the edge of this item as agenda size, but 4th of July is mentioned in there, so partly why I kind of went off on that trail. And back to Councilman Riggs' comments, that was a discussion we did have in the tourism committee, and that was some of her comments were expressed as I was exploring this as an issue, because with the OEA. And that goes back actually to another conversation we're having about the chamber being funded or helped with various projects and how that's an anathema issue. But then the OEA, which is our nonprofit organization that also, for example, puts on the Salmon Festival. But we're having insurance issues this year because the chamber last year, we covered it. We covered the insurance and all of that for the event. For the 4th of July out at the airport. This year, that's all up in the air. So I'm not even in a position to be able to, putting on that other hat just for a second, where we're even in a position to be able to say, we can take that on as the Rotary kind of goes in a different direction, which I'm very excited about. I think that's amazing with the lights on the bridge. What an amazing project for our community. But this amount of funding would be inadequate, I think, to if we were in the next month or so, say we want to fund a 4th of July event for the community, this 15 would fall short to pull it off. By the time you get done with probably supplemental insurance, the actual show itself, some shuttling and other incidentals, an event of that size is $25,000 to $30,000. But when it's all said and done.
Thank you. On the queue next, looks like Councilman Thompson.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And by the way, I completely agree with what Councilwoman Riggs said regarding our city taking the helm in this. I am not in favor of that at all. I think just putting money into the community enhancement budget is my comments and my desire. Just a couple points. Oroville has been voted as #1 redneck city in the state of California for a long time. You haven't seen that? No. Yeah, it's really something to be proud of. Of course, their markers aren't necessarily something to boast on. Number of bars, liquor stores. Yeah, I think it's liquor stores and places to buy guns, different things like that. But anyway, it does come down that Oroville does often rank at #1. We are, as well, on top of that, a constitutional republic, which is, I think it's pretty awesome. But back to the item at hand, and regarding the community enhancement budget, we as a city we'll drop $500,000+ on media. And it's needed, but sometimes where did that go? I know it's backlog programs, and I'm not trying to cap on our tech guys because they're amazing and they're keeping everything functioning, but we spend a lot of money on different things that the community doesn't necessarily get to see, and so I'm fully in favor of putting money into the community enhancement budget. I think that we all are. I do also agree that 15 or 20, if we're talking about diversifying that over a number of different events, I think is really small. I would actually, I know you mentioned 40 for a community enhancement budget. I would say let's put $100,000 in there for a community enhancement budget that would be able to do several things and not just one event, but things that would bring people to our community, that would really highlight the beauty that Oroville is. And regarding specifically the firework display, I would recommend or would like to see 20 as a minimum, but then we could add 5 for dollar matching donations. So another 5,000, that if somebody gives 1,000, then we match that. If nobody gives anything, then it just stays at 20. But there's a dollar for dollar after 20 up to another 5,000. But as a whole, for the community enhancement budget, I'd like to see more money in there, like 100,000. We have people, we have this Measure 1, and we have a surplus every year in the millions. Like a lot. So it'd be great to have something to give back to the community that they can enjoy. And fireworks is something that doesn't matter your age. You can be 2 weeks old, and I'm not sure if you'll enjoy it, but you'll be able to experience it. So that's my 2 cents.
Somebody got a motion for this? I'm ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion. If I may, before.
Yes.
So the idea here was just for this fiscal year.
Right.
Yes.
So obviously not gone through the budget process yet. I do understand we have had resources available to the millions in years past. I can't predict what it's going to be this year. So again, I'm more on the conservative side on the finances, and that you pay me to kind of be that. So I'll just throw out there. The idea here was just to get us through the next couple of months, reassess the budget, see where we're at, and then budget potentially a larger amount in going forward. But just so you know, we're at 15,000. That was just realizing we had a few months left in this fiscal year.
Right. I make a motion to allocate 100,000 into our. Is that what you for your mouth read?
I make an alternative motion to allocate $20,000 in the
Wait, I'm not finished with my motion.
All right.
100,000 with specifically regarding the fireworks, 20,000 with another 5 for matching dollar for donations. That is my motion, and I understand.
And Councilman Riggs, you have a second motion?
Yes. My alternative. No, I'm not seconding your motion. I appreciate you. My motion is to establish a community enhancement budget, allocate $20,000 this year, and I like your addition of when we use these funds, it can be used as a matching gift for other donations.
Okay. So we have a second motion. Anyone second the secondary motion?
I'll second.
I second that.
Which one?
Oh, she's seconding. Goodson seconding.
Councilman
Riggs.
Councilwoman Riggs.
Okay, so we need to vote on that one first before we're in the other.
What if? Okay.
I have a question though for Scott. Yes. Because originally when we brought this up, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to know how this was that the one-time COVID money was being used in other cities to do this. So, is it legal for us to do that then with the one-time COVID money?
The short answer is and again, it's called ARPA, ARPA, the American
Rescue Plan.
Yeah, the American Rescue Act, whatever the acronym stands for, I can't remember.
There was ARPA dollars for, I think, larger jurisdictions, and it was called the
Local fiscal recovery funds.
For smaller.
There we go.
Yeah.
So the short answer is they're general fund dollars. You can spend them as you wish. Now understand they are limited funds. They're one-time funds only, and the question is if there's any scrutiny. I would suggest if you want to use that money for a particular purpose, that you have findings that it's in the public interest to use that money for that purpose.
Yeah.
So that they can't come back and question you, well, was that really a public purpose? You declared it to be a public purpose. You outlined what the public purpose is.
Right.
Easy enough. But the short answer is yes, you can do that. Again, that the answer as to whether you should or should not do that is well above my pay grade. That's why you all are in these seats here. But is it legal? The short answer is yes.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor that was seconded, second motion to establish 20,000 in this fund.
Which motion was seconded?
So I have both of them seconded. Riggs and Goodson seconded the motion for a $20,000 budget for this year, and Thompson and Weber seconded the 100,000 budget with 20,000 for fireworks and 5,000 in matching donations.
So under the under the Rosenberg's rules of procedure, the second motion should be voted on first.
Okay.
And if that motion passes, then the first motion
Right.
dies because the first one was passed. If it doesn't pass, then you go to the first motion and see if that one passes.
And if they both die, then
You can make
Make
some
another motion.
alternate.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, before I call the vote, I want to clarify something that the city attorney said. The ARPA money that you're talking about would be specific to a request, not put in the budget. So we still have access to that money, but it would be specific to another request and not part of the budget thing. And I think that's what he said, which should be more important to be done, that we make a finding on that, whatever that issue is. It could be any one of the agencies that say, hey, we have this need, then that's a secondary funding request. So I will call for the vote for Councilman Riggs' motion.
So this is to establish a community enhancement budget at $20,000.
Yes.
No other.
what fiscal year are we talking about?
She just-
23, 24?
This fiscal year.
This
This fiscal.
And the only component she had is be offered as matching funds to any grant process.
That is an appropriate use.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's call for the vote.
Councilmember Goodson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Smith, how do you vote?
No. No.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 3 nos.
All right. Thank you. Are we done with that issue? Staff got any questions?
For now.
Huh?
For now.
For now.
Until next year.
Says April 14th.
Great.
Well, and in the past, we did have a fund consider this. It was around 60,000 that was utilized in the same way. But when monies got tight, we reduced that down to
And that was
zero.
before the current economics.
Yeah. So that was number 12. We're now number 13, formation of an architectural design work ad hoc committee.
Okay, this was another item that was requested to be brought forward, and initially looked into the formation of an ad hoc committee. And an ad hoc committee is, technically speaking, it's a short duration committee that is formed to accomplish a specific purpose, and then it disbands. So the way I interpreted the request at the last council meeting was that this would be an ongoing committee. So it wouldn't be an ad hoc committee per se. So then, or by definition, so the idea was possibly to consider if there is a desire to do this. You know, again, you can use the executive committee again, or if the council so chooses to form, another just independent standalone committee.
Mm-hmm. What's council's pleasure? Councilman Thompson, in the queue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My request would be to have a separate standalone committee that isn't terminated, that's ongoing.
Councilman Riggs.
Chrissy, I could do this. I'm ready for dinner. My question would be, just for a point of clarification, would committee members work through staff and alongside staff who would then communicate those expectations to our contractors and employees, or would they work hand in hand with contractors and employees?
Yeah, that was actually once we got further in this, that was a question I was going to have, because when I walked away from it at the last council meeting, my at least my interpretation of it would be this committee would be used for more prominent visual, very visual, architectural, big picture projects, not, for example, not like the lobby renovation. That wasn't even on my radar. This committee would, but so I do want to get clarity from the council. Is it the council's wish to be involved in every single design project, or is it going to be more for more visual, architectural? Again, that was just the way what I walked away with, which could have been a bad interpretation on my behalf.
Okay. Councilman Riggs, any more questions?
I guess my comment would be that, at least like on a case-by-case basis on projects that I hold dear to my heart, which are most of them, I have found that it's been quite easy to work with staff to give feedback and ideas and concepts, be able to have that communication with staff. And so I think that that's something that is a natural role of a council member, to meet with staff on things that you find particularly important. And so I would just hate for us to create another committee and then hold staff up in making progress that is needed because we're waiting for a committee to be able to meet in order to approve the paint color in the bathroom. At home, the committee for decorating is myself, and my husband very much disagrees, and that's great. And I do agree that we need a larger committee, a larger decision-making process here. But I would just encourage council members to really, when there's things that you really care about, work with staff and express that to them. And from my perspective, they have been, thank you, very receptive to ideas and feedback, and that has been a pretty healthy back and forth. So that's kind of my thought is, one, I would hate for us to slow down staff. I trust our staff and their professional decision making, and then I trust that they are eager to serve the pleasure of this council, and that when you bring things to them, that they respond appropriately. That's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Weber, please.
Yeah, so for clarification of what I would envision, this definitely would be a hands-on approach to projects where we would have materials inputs, pick paint colors, what kind of flooring is going to be installed, the aesthetics of how a project will look, the trim, all that on projects that are, I think having one individual have power and authority over that is a unwise decision. And I think that we as a council should have, or at least we should form this standalone committee to empower the council with decision-making process as to what we're going to do with our facilities, and also to empower the staff as well, because then it won't be just staff making decisions, it'll be the will of the council, and it'll help them with a very clear and concise direction that they need to go in. So I think the formation of the standalone committee is vitally important for not only council, for our city, and for staff. I think it's a good thing all the way around.
Councilman Thompson.
Thank you. I definitely am not for creating a quagmire or more bureaucracy. I do want to also remind, I guess, the council that the idea was welcomed by Don. For that input. It also helps to create clarity on feedback and whatnot. So, yeah, I think it'd be a great idea. It'd be beneficial for the community, beneficial for Don or whoever's helping out with that, and keep the council abridged to things that are going on. So, I'm absolutely in favor of it moving forward.
Any other council members? I'll speak on this issue. unless, was it Goodson, did you raise your flag?
I have my hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Smith, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to echo some of the other sentiment, just going back and using that item 5 of the Galloway and Associates as an example, I think that would have been a place where, it's not quagmiring. I would agree. I wouldn't want to slow things down. But at the same time, I think just if you had that committee where they met with initially, with the engineering and architectural folks, as they come in and do that initial evaluation, I think you just have more collaboration in that process. And I think that's kind of what we're looking for. And likewise, I found that the staff have been, very congenial, easy to work with. I have I think our staff is wonderful. And certainly there's a free flow of ideas and thoughts. But I think it would just add a depth of kind of assuredness and direction if you had a higher level of collaborative input from several council members, moving along with these projects, like this one we're looking at with redoing the face of the city hall. I think we need to have a standalone committee that would meet with staff just as things move along, as the process comes up. Not that you're having to wait, but just as the flow of work comes along, that you can connect with that committee and they can come down and meet with those individuals.
Councilman Riggs.
I was thinking about a recent project that we have of fencing around the lot home and how much space this council and past council was afforded to provide input and ideas on how that fence should be designed, and then staff built to that, created the plan to that design, and we came up with a $500,000 fence. So I caution against, we are elected as visionaries for our community, and to bring forth that vision and that positive light. Some of us are better at doing that than others of us. But I think that it's important to just balance it. Like when we are meeting in that capacity, if we're meeting with engineers and architects, that they are not as skilled in tempering our amazing ideas as maybe staff would be. And so I guess that if this committee was created, that it would be my preference that they work with staff and not with appointed staff, staff that respond and reply to or are hired by council, and not necessarily with our contract agents and all of those other people, that our council appointed staff serve as that liaison primarily from council to the contractors, because I could really see a contractor spending a lot of time and energy coming up with a great idea that council members have that is far beyond the scope of really what we should be focusing on, and that what is actually needed at this time or even budgeted for.
Councilman Thompson.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with what Chrissy said. So my idea for this would not be to get in the minutia of going down and talking to the fence installer or whatnot, but just working with our staff, and then that moving forward, and just having really a liaison between some of the minutia with council and design projects that are kind of larger. And obviously, it's the tiny little stuff. It's the larger stuff is what's on my mind. Being a leader of a different organization, the church, when we do want to change, carpet, we put together a committee, and we bring people in who we trust, we think are awesome, have great ideas, and we get their input. But we also have to work within a committee to get that overall buy-in. So I wouldn't think of this committee to be going down and giving the contractors or whatnot a hard time and trying to micromanage. I think that's for staff to do, and we just overall are brought in more with the process.
Anyone else? All right, my turn to weigh in. I don't really have, oh, did I hear someone else online? No, okay. I don't really favor this at all because, number one, it violates the city charter. For the city council members, section 2.08.00, no elected official shall give any direction to any subordinate in the city of Oroville, period, folks. And the idea that we would sit on a committee and give staff direction is in violation of the city charter, period. You can check it out, read it out. We are here as policymakers. We are here as decision makers. We are not to get in the minutia. We were not hired to be managers. And I will violently protect that issue. I have probably served before with this city, and many people would happily, take my direction. But I told them, I said, if I ever did that, you have my permission to hit me over the head with a baseball bat. I just asked that it be a plastic bat, not a hard one, So I cut a real straight line on what I do and don't do here on the council. And my job is to represent the policy making. The staff's made a recommendation here that the items that would come forward would go to the executive committee to be pushed forward to the city staff or to the city council for full council. So I think we already have that process in place. I would support that particular process just because it doesn't seem like this committee, this idea is going to work that well in the process because staff has a good job to do. We give them direction, we give them the idea, and let them bring it back forward to us. And we should not get involved in the minutia of detail. That's not our job. It's just not our job, and it's very clearly stated in the city charter. So, the council could vote to have this committee, but the rules say the mayor has to appoint. And I have no interest in appointing anybody to this committee. Councilman Thompson.
Thank you, sir. So according to this, Mr. Huber, if you can correct, so is this what Mayor Pittman quoted regarding our city charter? Does that mean that no council members are to speak with Dawn?
So
your mic's muted.
Oh, yeah.
it's not that you can't speak with subordinate employees, but your direction that you give should go through the city administrator.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Great.
That's correct.
So that if there was a committee, then that would be the process in which the committee would work.
Yes.
Again, this committee, if it's established, is established how the council desires. Mayor Pittman is correct. I'll correct one thing, and then I'll let him. It's not the city charter; it's actually the city ordinance, but it has the same effect because the government code has the exact same provision. But which is in many ways a distinction without a difference. But anyway, to use that phrase from the Supreme Court many years ago. However, like I said, it would be important. Mayor Pittman is correct in that direction that comes from a committee, ad hoc or otherwise, needs to go to your city administrator. Not because it's illegal to give direction to a subordinate, but because your city administrator deserves that. And now whether it's illegal or not is an open question. Well, when I'm not even talking, but I'm just saying, it really the direction needs to flow through the right channels, and that's through your city administrator. That's who you hired for that position. He is your engine. He is your motor. He is your I sort of use the analogy. You stand up in the crow's nest of the ship, and he's steering the ship, and then he's calling all of staff to pull the sails and do all the other stuff. That I'm now out of my boating metaphors.
Get back to the plane metaphors.
I'm quickly out of my boating metaphors, but so that's really that's really I think what's the important way to go about it.
So a secondary follow-up question with this. From my understanding, though, currently we have, and maybe I'm not clear on this, but currently we have at least one, if not two, council members who are working together with Dawn in regarding the rebranding project, which if what you're saying is accurate, and maybe I can just need some more clarification, but it sounds to me from an outsider who's not involved with that specific project, which is larger than painting the inside of a bathroom, that the...
One would hope.
What's that?
One would hope.
Yeah. So if there are a small number or person who's working with Dawn in that, then that you're saying that even is outside of our city charter and needs to be rectified?
So I would need to actually ask some questions to answer that, to answer your hypothetical scenario, because I need to know, well, no, I need to know, are there consultants that you've hired that are in that room? Because you do have the ability to tell consultants what you want.
Yes.
She may be there as a facilitator. Now, I don't know that that's the case, but I suspect that that's probably where it shakes out. I don't know that. I'm making a guess.
That is correct,
Can I
Scott.
speak to this?
Yeah, sure.
And that we're not providing direction, but we're just providing insight in the same way that we are providing insight right now.
And also,
Oh, you trapped me.
I did.
Also, the contractor asked for 8 people from the city,
Right.
inclusive, so we're satisfying the contractor consultant.
Right. You can give direction straight to
Consultants,
consultants. Again, provided that the terms of the
Right.
contract allow for that. Those
Again, we're not
specifically do.
providing direction.
Well, but again, you can provide it to the consultant. That's my point. Is so the setup doesn't violate anything necessarily.
Okay. Councilman Weber.
Thank you. Mike. Sorry. This has been, this has nothing to do with giving staff direction at all. There's no interest by myself or anybody on this dais to break the charter. What this is a creative input committee. It's just pretty simple. This isn't, we're overcomplicating this to the max. I think we have an obligation and responsibility to have input on projects that are going to have a bearing on the face of our buildings or the aesthetics of the interior. This is super uncomplicated stuff, but we're making it way overly complicated. And I don't know why. To form an ad hoc, or excuse me, a standalone committee to have creative input and projects that are important, not only for us, the city, our constituents, it just makes sense. So there's nobody trying to give anybody direction. And if we did give direction, we would do it through proper channels. And even then, it wouldn't even be direction. It would be like, hey, I think we should probably go with carpet tiles here instead of vinyl plank flooring or whatever. This is really way, way overcomplicated at this point. So I make a motion that we adopt this as a standalone committee and that we just have creative input. We're not going to give Ms. Nevers any input or direction, but we could give creative feedback through the standalone committee when it pertains to aesthetics of buildings, how we're going to do it, whatever, all that stuff. I make a motion that we adopt this and create the standalone committee.
Councilman Riggs, before we call a vote, you would speak? No, I got you when you're... Okay. I guess we're ready to call for the vote.
Councilmember Goodson, how do you vote?
No.
Councilmember Smith, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 3 nos.
Okay. Next item is public communication hearing of non-agenda items. This is a second.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I did want to comment on the item that we just voted on, if I might, just real briefly.
Didn't see on the queue.
That's fine. When it comes to, back to Councilman Thompson's concern about giving direction. So within that hired consultant with the rebranding, we are giving, at least I am, I can't answer for Councilwoman Riggs, but in that collaborative, there is direction that we're giving to the contractor, not to staff, but we're participating in that process. And I think that it is a collaborative effort that is, I think that we're developing a quality, the item here that I think that once it's presented that everyone will be proud of. But just I think it's just important to clarify that that we are participating in that process, and that I think that it is important that that the council has opportunity to give voice to items, in particular, so that we don't go down a track and get down a path of ways that we have to back up on, or have regrets on later on. I think that be able to participate on some level, in particular with our city administrator, I think that's important, that we feel that there's an open door policy and opportunity to have a free flow and exchange. I think that it is valuable, notwithstanding, overstepping the law or going beyond and giving direction. And I think there's a healthy respect for that. But I think it's just important to acknowledge that, that we do that on occasion within the confines of, the rules of that committee and how that's constructed.
Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is the public communication hearing of non-agenda items. This is just like we did at the beginning of the meeting. If you would like to speak on a non-agenda item, you may come up. Do we have any cards, Jackie?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speakers on this item.
Can I have a few extra seconds?
Sure.
Starting the Fiesta Day Parade. When we did the Veterans Day Parade, I put the
Oh yeah, thank you. Hit the button.
And we had just enough barricades to completely block off the route. This year we're doing the car show at the same time, and I've mentioned it a few times, and I'm just trying to be the squeaky wheel. I don't want it to get time for the parade and car show and there not be enough barricades to completely seal off every area that needs done safely, and would ask the city to make sure if we're not going to be able to provide enough barricades, to let either the car show or the Exchange Club know that they're going to have to provide their own barricades, so that we don't get to the event and not have it barricaded off safely. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports and discussions. Council announcements and reports. Councilman Riggs.
Thank you. I was asked to share on behalf of the Downtown Business Association that the Spring Fling First Friday event is this Friday from 4 to 8 p.m. and will feature face painting, sales like spring cleaning style sales, some snacks and other activities within the downtown district. So good opportunity to get to know your business owners and shop attendees and enjoy this beautiful weather that we're finally having. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Weber.
Yeah, thank you very much. Stay tuned for some really cool stuff on our next meeting too, because Councilwoman Johnston and I have been working on some plans for our roads and the condition of roads. So I think some cool stuff's going to happen. At least we think the proposal will happen. So please stay tuned for that. And then I also want to ask for a future agenda item to be on maybe even on
Thank you. Anyone else in the queue? Not seeing anyone. I'll take the moment here. I also serve on the Housing Authority of Butte County, and we went to Washington last week to advocate for issues of housing and more housing in Butte County. And one of the examples I'll give is there's no housing authority that has lost so many units than Butte, in terms of the Camp Fire, the North Complex Fire, the Dixie Fire. So we stood loud and proud to say, you ought to look at us, because I believe this housing authority is writing the book on how to recover from disaster. And one of the most interesting issues that seems to be bipartisan support, and I wanted to share it here, is there's an effort to give tax credits for single-family housing. That has never occurred before in the House. All these new affordable apartments you're seeing, those are being built by private money with 9% tax credits. That's where the money's coming from. It's not government money. But this new proposal that is going through Congress right now and is doing very well, would give tax credits to single-family projects. So I'm happy to say if it does move forward, I'm looking to see some improvements in South Oroville, looking to see some improvements in many areas of Thermalito, because then the investors would be seriously investing and turning that over. And the unique thing in this particular proposal is it wouldn't be those were turned into rentals, they'd actually been turned into purchasable properties for the tenant. So that's a big deal, and let's hope that it passes and moves forward. Like I said, the Senate proposed it. It's got bipartisan support. We visited many offices, our Senator Padilla and Congressman Lamoffa. So let's keep an eye on that one. So, other than that, anyone else?
Thank you.
Staff reports, please. Administration.
I will start off. In preparation for the Easter weekend events, our parks crew has been out spiffing up our parks, and they've also replaced the broken slide at Rotary Park. We will be holding another community input meeting for the Feather River Parkway Master Plan at the end of this month. More details to come on that. We're finalizing a date and time for that meeting. With the good weather, our parks crew and our streets crew has been out. Well, the streets crew's been out filling potholes, and the parks crew again has been out spiffing up the parks. And our roof repairs have commenced on City Hall. As you can see, the front facade improvements are underway, with more to come. And so, very active right now with good weather.
Yeah. Ruth?
I just want to call your attention to the correspondence from our LAIF, our bank that we have all of our money in. They wanted to comment on the recent bank closures and the impact it's having on our money. There's a lot of fear out there that our money isn't safe, so they wrote all of the deposit holders a letter saying your money is safe. I believe all the banks have reached out to us. Our operating account, they also had a webinar that your money is safe, and all the CDs we just bought are FDIC insured, so the money's safe.
Compliments to your staff over the little issue with their paychecks and whatnot. I know you had to work extra.
I can't wait till that's long behind in my distant memory. I hope that never happens
Mr.
again.
Belser.
Now that March has ended, I just want to share our March numbers for the Code Enforcement Department. Right now, my team of 6 is juggling 176 active cases. They closed 174 cases in March. They opened up 101 new cases. They abated 23 abandoned vehicles off the roadway, 20 building code violations, 10 multi-family violations, and 53 public nuisance violations. They also issued 10 stop work notices to individuals doing construction without a permit. I also want to recognize City Works. They're busy at Hewitt Park and Rotary doing some landscaping stuff, a lot of weed eating, a lot of bush removal to get in preparation for the Easter festivities this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. This side of the room.
So I just wanted to update staff on the status of our PLHA award. That project is for the Lincoln Street apartments that we've been working really hard with our disaster funding. We did receive initially a letter that saying that we didn't pass threshold. However, with the assistance of the development group, Richmond Group, we successfully appealed that, so we were awarded $2.5 million for that project.
Good. Good. I will add, when we were at HUD with that conference, we were all pushing the issue of their deadlines that come into place that crisscross and don't make any sense. So
None at all.
your comments were at least carried back there, and they understood it. I don't know if they're going to change it, but they certainly understood it. So
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple quick items. Just want to thank the council again for, I think we had a really productive meeting last Tuesday for the goals and priority setting session, and I can assure you that we've met with staff and talked about the ideas, and we're going to try to incorporate those priorities into this year's budget. And again, this year's budget is definitely gaining momentum. As we talked about earlier this evening, the requests are due April 14th, so a lot of effort and time will be spent on that here in the near future. And then again, this reminder, chamber dinner this Thursday. So if I know we have a few potential seats still available, so if there's council members, I think you reached out to Jackie already, so we'll see everyone Thursday night.
looks good. I wanted to share with council members too. The state of the city is typically the mayor's thing, but this year I've asked the city employees to do a PowerPoint and make them, that's the state of the city, what the city employees are going to do. And my talking and be very little. In fact, most of it is you're going to all be working, shaking hands of all the students that are going to get all their certificates. So it'll be a good night. And you won't hear me talking very much at all. So that's kind of the plan. We'll have more coming up here. But I was out at Las Plumas High School today. They were very excited to be here and to get their recognition and on the stage. It's a great idea. So with that, I'll
I have something.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry. I feel like council announcements and reports and future agenda items got melded together, and so I didn't share this, but during the budget and priority setting, it was brought up about a fire engine, and then that was sent back to us with some costing ideas, and there was a note that price, would go up at the end of this month. So I thought maybe that should be a future agenda item in our next meeting, is talking about what those items would be, and if we have room in our current budget to make a move on an engine, or if that is something that we need to delay. Does anybody else want to talk about that?
I agree. I want that on the agenda.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think it's a good item to have. And one of the issues, because I come from that world, if you can get a lease purchase agreement now and then ask for later delivery, it's a good way to lock in a price.
Yeah.
So you're not suffering at the end. Yeah, lock in a delivery time. And they like those kind of things because then they can plan too. So it would be worthy of talking about for sure.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
On the type 6.
Okay.
So I spoke with Chief Tens, and we are giving them until July 1st to deliver the Ford. If that does not happen, then we will order the Dodge.
Okay.
So
that's the struggle we're all in and everything doing. Every venue is getting part problems. So, all right. Looking around the room, don't see any more else. Any comments? I adjourn this meeting at 8:20 or 8:17. Thank you all.